Number 5 on this list is the Myrtles Plantation. The Myrtles Plantation is located in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and is home to a plethora of ghosts. The plantation was established in 1796 and is said to have been built on an ancient burial grounds. These burial grounds have obviously contributed to the deep spiritual presence that it has, and the reports that there are 12 different ghosts that currently occupy the space. However, the spirit that is most commonly seen wandering the place wasn't from these burial grounds at all, but an incident that occurred at the plantation many years ago. Chloe, a slave of the plantation in the early 1800s, was eavesdropping one day on a conversation between the family who owned the plantation. The punishment was swift and drastic, and they cut off one of Chloe's ears so that she would never do it again. Chloe obviously didn't take too kindly to this, and even though she knew it would most likely mean her death, wanted to retaliate. She did so by poisoning a birthday cake, which in turn killed 2 of the owner's daughters. For this, she was put to death and executed. However, it is said that Chloe's spirit still wanders the ground to this day and is the most commonly spotted ghost at this plantation. She will be wearing a turban to cover up her ear that was chopped off when she was alive. If you ever see this ghost, people say that you immediately get filled with a deep and solemn depression that hangs over you for quite some time. People speculate that the deep depression that you feel after encountering her may have been the way that she felt while she was alive. Number 4 on this list is the Whaley House. The Whaley House is located in San Diego, California, and is said by some to be the most haunted home in all of the United States. The ghost who haunts the home is not your standard phantom. In fact, it is the spirit of a convicted high-profile robber from the 1850s. Yankee Jim had a good run of thievery, but was inevitably unable to avoid the gallows and was hung off of the back of a wagon in 1852. Thomas Whaley was at that hanging and watched as Yankee Jim died. This did not deter him though from purchasing the very land where it happened. It was at this spot that he proceeded to build what is known today as the Whaley House. It didn't take very long at this home though before the Whaleys quickly realized the errors of their ways. It is said that it took only a few weeks of living there before they started to notice strange ongoings at the home. Doors would slam without anyone around them at all. They may even lock themselves as well with you inside. Footsteps could be heard moving around the home at all hours throughout the day. These footsteps were large, the sound of a big boot attacking the ground, the sound of Yankee Jim. In the entirety of that time the family owned the home, for over 100 years, there was never a time that they said they weren't haunted in this house. After the home was donated and turned into a museum, the sightings became more exaggerated. Different phantoms started appearing, screams were heard, items would float from place to place. A parapsychologist even reported seeing a phantom dog run through the home at one point. Frankly, I don't believe all of these secondary claims. It kind of feels like people's imaginations ran with the idea of having a haunting once it turned into a museum. But I do believe the ghost of Yankee Jim to be a very real thing. If you do go to this home, make sure you have no valuables with you, or Yankee Jim may just claim them for himself. Number 3 on this list is Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. We just spoke about the most haunted home in America, so it's only fitting that we talk about the most haunted cemetery in America. The Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is located in Chicago, Illinois, and has potentially the widest array of ghost stories that I've ever heard of. It's not the biggest graveyard in the world. In fact, it doesn't even operate as one anymore. It was established in the 1840s and practically abandoned in the mid-1900s. There were rumors that the mafia used to use this place as a spot to dump bodies, as it's reasonably secluded and nobody could see them do it. Its secluded nature, rumors tied to the mafia, and the inevitable vandalism that it did receive could all be reasons why it's haunted today. Now, I was talking about the mafia and gangsters. Well, one of the biggest ghostly sightings at this cemetery is actually a gangster car. The graveyard is right next to a road, and people driving down that road have reported seeing the distinct image of a vehicle in the middle of the road resembling a mafia vehicle. People have actually fully swerved off of the road and crashed their own cars, and then later realized that nothing was there at all. Others have seen a whole farmhouse appear in the graveyard, but when they tried to go to it, it completely disappeared. Cars and farmhouses, these are big apparitions, and lead me to believe that the spiritual presence in this cemetery has got to be really strong. In 1991, the Chicago Sun released a very famous picture of the graveyard in which there appears to be the figure of a woman sitting on a gravestone, all in white. The photographer behind this picture claims that there wasn't anybody there when he took the picture and it only came up on the camera. With over 100 ghostly sightings in this cemetery, I do believe that it's claimed to be the most haunted cemetery in America. It's well earned. Number 2 on this list is Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is located in Louisville, Kentucky and was home to thousands of deaths. At least 8,000 if we're really trying to be exact. The sanatorium was built in 1910 and the main patients that it dealt with were victims of the White Plague. Back then there was no known cure and many of the patients died to this disease. That wasn't the only way that they died here though. It is believed that doctors would use these dying patients as guinea pigs for some drugs or treatments that they were developing. However, oftentimes this would just result in the patient's death. After the White Plague had largely been dealt with, the space was transformed into a geriatric hospital. The liberties that the doctors and the nurses took, they got even worse when this happened. Electroshock therapy was utilized. Major injustices and mistreatments were done on the patients from the nurses. It really all went bad. In the 1980s, this spot was shut down for good, but by that point, the damage had already been done. Now Waverly Hills is one of the most haunted locations in America. People say that there are constant footsteps all over the place even though there's hardly anyone in the building. Doors will slam and lock when no one's even close to them. Phantoms and shadows will stalk people throughout the hallways of the building, seemingly waiting for a moment to strike. Screams and shrieks of former patients can be heard ringing throughout the corridors of the building. Many ghosts haunt the death tunnel, which was a place where they used to move the bodies of the dead. In room 502, there have been reported attacks on people, where they have felt their bodies seize up and get thrown to the ground. In that room, 2 nurses committed suicide. Apparently one of them jumped out of the window and the other one hung themselves because they couldn't live with the ongoing death that happened in this place. This building has seen way too many horrible things in its existence to just be a building anymore. Feel free to look it up on the internet if you're interested, but don't go visit this in person. Number 1 on this list is the Eastern State Penitentiary. This prison is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and when you hear the types of things that went on at this place, it's no wonder that it's haunted as badly as it is. The facility was built in 1829 and was in service for roughly 150 years. Now if this place had a motto, then it would have to be something about solitude. That was the theme at Eastern State Penitentiary, being alone. If you were a prisoner there, then you had your very own tiny little cell where you lived alone, ate alone, slept alone, and just existed alone. The thing is, it wasn't just the cell either. If you had to go to the washroom or leave the cell for any reason, then the guards would put a bag over your head and they would walk you to wherever you're going. The only thing that you will ever know if you go to this place is your cell. The mental strain that that amount of solitude would have had on those prisoners, it would have been insane. This wasn't the only form of punishment though. There were reports of chaining your tongue to your wrist and leaving you like that. They would dunk you in water and then they would hang you outside in the winter until your body literally froze. And honestly, there was a lot more horrible things that they did too that I don't even want to get into. Either way, due to all the horrors, due to all the death, due to all the atrocities that went on in these walls, the prison now boasts its fair share of ghosts. It is currently open to the public, however, I would not recommend going and checking it out. They have various cell blocks that are all known for different ghostly experiences. One of them has extreme echoing voices of laughter as if somebody was going insane. One of them has what it feels like evil shadowy figures jumping from wall to wall. The bloodthirst that these figures have is reportedly palpable. Another cell block has the visions of the dead faces that appear battered and bloodied right in front of you. Gary Johnson, who works to upkeep the prison, had a harrowing experience here before. He was opening up a cell block to clean it when all of a sudden his body stopped functioning and he was completely paralyzed but also totally aware. He felt as if spirits were invading his body and hurting his mind as he was frozen. Finally he was released and ran from the scene. This prison is haunted to its core and it must be avoided at all costs.
In 5th place, we have the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. Fun fact, California tends to easily be one of the top 5 most haunted states out of the entire United States. And it was a struggle today not making another list with purely locations from, California. The origins for this crazy tale begin in 1881 when the passing of Sarah Winchester's mother, father-in-law, and husband, William Winchester, of the famed Winchester Repeating Arms Company, all happened in under a year, leaving her with a very large inheritance, assumed to be around $20 million, and a 50% stake in the company, making her one of the wealthiest women at the time. If $20 million doesn't sound super rich to y'all, in today's money that would be about $561.6 million. Chump change, right? After living in Connecticut for the majority of her life, an arthritis diagnosis and meeting with a medium convinced Sarah to start a new life in California. She believed her family to be cursed by victims of the Winchester rifle and began construction on what was originally a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse, which she purchased in 1886. She and her late husband shared an interest in architecture, and after dismissing all of the architects she originally met with, Sarah decided to do all of the home planning herself. She was known to rebuild and abandon construction if anything didn't meet her expectations, which resulted in a maze-like design. It is believed that said maze-like design was mainly intended to confuse and keep spirits from harming her and what was left of her family. According to paranormal investigators Mary Jo Ignoffo and Joe Nickel, the bell tower built on the property was used to summon spirits, and Sarah was known to throw lavish parties for the beings she feared in an attempt to please them. It was reported in the San Jose News in 1897 that a 7-story tower was torn down and rebuilt 7 times. Honestly, I respect the attention to perfection, knowing what you want, and having the money to be able to not settle. As a result of her expansions, there are walled-off exterior windows and doors that lead to nowhere, along with staircases that end suddenly, and as the house grew in size, up to 5 additional levels were added to the home. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake hit, the damage to the home was quite extensive, causing the collapse of the 7-story tower and most of the chimneys. An entire wing was destroyed along with the 3rd and 4th story additions, and pipes began protruding from what were once window boxes. Before the earthquake, the house is believed to have had 500 rooms, and at the time of Sarah's passing in 1922, the house had 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. Visitors to the house today have reported multiple instances of experiencing cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and feelings of being watched. Honestly, I still kind of want to visit it. In 4th place, we have Myrtles Plantation. Located in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and built in 1796 by General David Bradford on top of a former burial ground, this domicile is believed to play home to at least 12 different ghosts. So, brace yourselves for a highlight reel. Our first ghosty story begins with a newly married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Clark Woodruff. Mr. Woodruff was a cruel and harmful man and owned numerous indentured servants, which was the icky norm at the time, and one in particular that he liked to, punish went by the name of Chloe. Now, Chloe tried to protect herself from the wrongful punishments by listening in on the Woodruffs' conversations and modifying her behavior, which is kind of brilliant. Sadly though, one day after being caught eavesdropping, Clark had one of Chloe's ears cut off. Her mutilation was hidden, at the demand of the Woodruffs, by the use of a green turban. Even though most folks wouldn't see the damage, the painful experience would stay with Chloe and inspire her to make plans for revenge. On the 9th birthday of the Woodruff's daughter, Chloe placed poisonous oleander leaves into the cake, intending to only get them sick so she could nurse them back to health and earn a favor with the family. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Tragically, the dosage was lethal, and it ended up killing the missus and the offspring. After word spread of her actions on the plantation, the other servants were the ones to take revenge. Chloe was hanged by the neck for everyone to witness until the life was drained from her body, and then her body was weighed down by rocks and thrown into the Mississippi River. Multiple visitors to the current location have reported seeing the transparent and ghostly apparitions of a young girl wearing a green turban moving throughout the property. In 1992, the owner took a photo that they believe captures Chloe's spirit. This photo was originally intended to be used to secure an insurance policy for the home in case of fire or other natural disasters, not to prove paranormal activity. The presence of a human figure within the photo was undiscovered until it was developed. Many tests have been done to verify its authenticity, but make sure to let me know in the comments what you folks think after seeing it. Alrighty, what's next? Oh, the next owner of the property, a wealthy family man, and his 5 wards would pass away from tuberculosis on the property. The home was later passed to one of his surviving daughters and her husband, the Winters. Mr. William Winter was a proud member of his community and taught Sunday school out of the home. So one day, as William was teaching, an unknown man rode up on a horse yelling to see him, and as he came out to address the man, he was shot at point-blank range on his front porch. William retreated into the home and staggered partway up the stairs before passing away in his wife's arms on the 17th step of the staircase. The sound of his strong and forceful stomps still linger in the home today, as visitors report hearing heavy footsteps from empty staircases. The overall paranormal activity became more noticeable in the 1970s once it was purchased by the Myers family. Oh, right. Remember how I mentioned it was stupidly built over a burial ground? The ghost of a young Native American woman has been repeatedly spotted fluttering about. During the Civil War, the house was ransacked by Union soldiers, and legend claims that 3 were killed in the house, leaving a scarlet stain in a doorway, roughly the size of a human body that cannot be removed. In third place, we have the Crescent Hotel. Located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, it was erected in 1886 and has served several purposes over time, such as a luxury resort, a conservatory for young women, and a junior college. But the strangest mark on its history came in 1937 when it got a new owner, Norman G. Baker. Norman was a millionaire inventor and radio personality who decided to pose as a doctor despite having no medical training and wanted to turn the hotel into a hospital that could cure cancer? He was eventually found out and was run out of town, but his spirit somehow found its way back to the hotel and found some otherworldly company as well. The now operating Crescent Hotel is said to be haunted by at least 8 ghosts, ranging from a small girl to a bearded man wearing Victorian clothing. When current owners Marty and Elise bought the hotel in 1997, they hired 2 certified mediums to do a reading of the building. The mediums found that the hotel showed signs of being a portal to the other side, as in a dimension that holds the spirits of the dead and can be accessed by those on the same frequency as ghosts. That portal is located on top of what used to be the morgue. One thing I like to stress, especially when dealing with angry ghosties, is to never disturb the graves. And a formal archaeological dig was done on the property in 2019, uncovering Norman Baker's bottle grave, with some of the glass containers clearly showing fleshy remains, while others are believed to have held his assorted curing potions that never cured anyone. If you'd like to see them for yourself, they're on display in the Crescent's morgue. Oh, I totally forgot. The morgue, complete with autopsy table and a walk-in cooler where Baker stored cadavers and body parts, are open for public viewing. The experience comes with seeing the ghosts of younglings huddled under the morgue's autopsy table, pleading for help, the reoccurrence of a Baker patient who also served as a hospital assistant being seen in and around room 419, better known as Theodora's room, the early morning loud squeaking of wheels in the 3rd floor corridor, accompanied by sightings of a nurse pushing a gurney full of corpses down the hallway, only to see it vanish into thin air. In second place, we have Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. The castle-like penitentiary took solitary confinement to new levels when it was built in 1829. Prisoners lived alone, exercised alone, and ate alone. When an inmate left his cell, a guard would cover his head with a hood so he couldn't see or be seen. Now, the prison had to abandon its solitary system due to overcrowding from 1913 until it closed in 1970, although the forms of punishment did not get any less severe. Current reported paranormal happenings have included, disembodied laughter, shadowy figures, and pacing footsteps. Yeah. Elaborating now. Cell Block 12 is known for echoing voices and cackling, while Cell Block 6 is known for shadowy figures darting along the walls, and Cell Block 4 tends to have visions of ghostly faces. Many people have reported seeing a silhouette of a guard in one of the towers. Oh, and that might not sound weird, but there's no way to physically get to the top of the tower today, since the brick stairs crumbled away, many years ago. One of the more legendary tales comes from Gary Johnson, who helps maintain the crumbling old locks at the prison. In the early 1990s, he had just opened an old lock in cell block 4 when he says a force gripped him so tightly that he was unable to move. He described a negative, horrible energy that exploded out of the cell, while tormented faces appeared on the cell walls, and that one form in particular beckoned to him. Although executions were not carried out at Eastern State, the prison was home to its fair share of deaths. At least, 2 guards were killed over the years, as were many inmates, with their spirits still very much present. In first place, we have the Hotel Monte Vista in Flagstaff, Arizona. So with tourism on the rise in the 1920s, residents of Flagstaff decided that building a hotel was the crucial, next step in aiding the city's growth as one of northern Arizona's premier destinations. Fundraising began in early 1926, and by New Year's Day on 1927, the hotel was finally open, offering 73 guest rooms under the name Community Motel, which would later be changed to the Monte Vista, a name chosen by a 12-year-old contest winner. This hotel hosted one of the few hidden speakeasies in Flagstaff during Prohibition, which was, a late-night establishment fed by secret tunnels that were built by railroad workers and ran for miles below the downtown core. Over the years, it has adopted quite a few spirits, and I'd like to elaborate on 3 of them. Out of the many rooms in this historic hotel where the spirits of the past like to make their presence known, let's start with room 220, where an unusual one-time resident, known as the Meat Man, is still causing a stir to this day. This long-term boarder, who spent his days at the Monte Vista back in the early 1980s, had a somewhat unusual habit, hanging raw meat from a chandelier. No one has any clue why he did this, but definitely makes him memorable. One day, the poor schmuck was found dead in his room. Nothing suspicious otherwise, and what has happened in that room since that day is why he made this list. On one such occasion, not long after the meat man had passed, a maintenance worker for the hotel was up in room 220 making a few repairs. When he left, he turned off the lights and locked the door, but when he returned shortly after, he found that chaos had erupted in his absence. The television was fully on, playing at full volume, and even more distressing, the linens on the bed had been violently removed, ripped up, and scattered across the room as if in a fit of anger. The maintenance worker in question steered clear of room 220 from then on, but even today, guests in the room have reported the television acting on its own accord, though it, has long since been replaced, as well as the cold touch of a man's hands. Ooh. Next up, the rocking chair of room 305. So the most common report, which has been well documented, is of an elderly woman in the rocking chair by the window. Guests have long told the tale of the chair moving by itself, knocking against the closet, and some have even seen the old woman herself, gazing longingly out the window. While the woman's name is not known, old stories from the hotel tell of a long-term resident who would, sit by the window, day in and day out, looking out into the world, perhaps waiting patiently for someone to return. Finally, I feel like I'd be cursed if I left out the ladies of room 306. In the early 1940s, 2 women of the night were working their shift, only to be picked up by a man who was staying in, room 306 of the Monte Vista Hotel and looking for some company for the night. The 2 women returned to his room, and that night were, brutally ended and dumped out of the 3rd floor window to the street below. What happened to these women was horrendous, and it seems that they agree, seeing as their spirits are still haunting this room, lashing out at anyone who dares to stay there. In the decade since, guests have reported the uneasy feeling of being watched, as well as difficulty sleeping. Men in particular tend to be affected, with some claiming that ghostly hands have been placed over their mouths or throats while they sleep. I'll start off with an easy one, and that's Centralia, Pennsylvania. From the late 1800s to the 1960s, this place was a quaint but bustling town in Little Pennsylvania, thanks to its very prosperous coal mines. However, when a mine mysteriously caught fire in 1962, the flames began to spread underground via the interconnecting tunnels. Although the citizens were aware of the situation, they weren't truly troubled until 2 isolated incidents a couple years later. A gas station owner reporting abnormally high gasoline temperatures in his underground tanks in 1979, and a young boy nearly falling into a 150-foot deep sinkhole over in his backyard in 1981. After that, the town's population plummeted. This town has burned for about 50 years now. This mine certainly seems like a fiery lair of dastardly demons and spirits. What's more is the fire heats the groundwater to boiling temperatures, causing a lot of steam to rise. On a lot of days, this gives Centralia's landscape an unsettling, misty appearance. With only a couple of buildings left, it's a abandoned place. A lot of the residents are not there. I think there's only 4 left. So if you go to Centralia, it's a ghost town. This place has actually more people buried there than it has living residents, which is super unsettling if you ask me. So if you're driving around the town, you'll find 3 cemeteries: St. Ignatius, St. Peter and Paul Orthodox, and Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. If you're gonna walk around the ruins of this modern day ghost town, it'll give you the feeling of supernatural forces working underfoot. And because of all this, there's been some stories that have come to light. Some are stories from visitors who left in fear after thinking they saw a person or a thing, heard odd sounds, and some folks just felt like they were being watched. Other people go so far as to say that this place is the gateway to hell. One group of visitors heard what sounded like a voice saying something inaudible from down below when they were visiting a cemetery. At first they were like, okay, maybe it's somebody else, and they're like, well, forget about it. Then they heard it again, a little more clearly, just a few words, and it sort of sounded like, leave this place. At that moment, the hill the group was standing on started steaming, more so than before, and it really stunk, like rotten eggs. It spooked the friends, so they made the decision to leave, and as they were heading back to their car, they heard it again. Not the same words and not clear, but something like, why? Why did you do that? What was even weirder is that it wasn't like somebody was yelling it out of the bushes. It was quiet, kind of closer. Nobody knew where it was coming from. It seems like most colleges and universities have at least a couple of ghost stories to tell, and Wichita State University in Kansas is no exception. Tales of mysterious sounds, lights, and figures are commonplace in the older buildings on campus. 2 buildings in particular come up when the campus ghost stories start getting told. Henry Gymnasium and Wilner Auditorium are part of the WSU lore about things that go bump in the night. I love that song from Scooby-Doo. The story of the ghost in Henrian tells of a maintenance worker who was electrocuted on the very job in the 1950s. Details kind of vary. Some say he hit a live wire with his bare head. Another version says that he was hit by lightning while mopping. It's said that his ghost appears in the building in the middle of the night and early in the morning. The auditorium, on the other hand, has gained a reputation for being very haunted. We've got all the usual suspects: flickering lights, doors closing on their own, disembodied voices, and the occasional apparition. A lot of folks have witnessed it. Mary Nelson, a program consultant for the library, says the ghost is likely that of George Wilner, the namesake of the building. She's like, he's probably friendly, just wants to make sure his building is taken care of. which I get it. Now also apparently Fisk Hall might be haunted. Since it's the oldest building on campus, it certainly has the history to be a likely place for a haunting. It's been used as a men's dormitory, an infirmary during the influenza situation, and the office space for a lot of different departments. Even investigators from the Wichita Paranormal Research Society picked up the possible presence of a ghostie. We didn't get a name, sadly. I know cemeteries are kind of low-hanging fruit when it comes to being haunted, but let me have this. The Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia is home to a couple of notable ghosties, and I just fell so in love with them today that they had to make my list. Located on the 17-mile-long Wilmington River, some 3 miles down from downtown Savannah, is this fascinatingly beautiful cemetery that has been described as a natural cathedral. Like, come on. You've got these stoic, tall, live oak trees that are just cloaked in Spanish moss. They're all lining the winding paths. It's such a beautifully haunting allure to the many elaborate and time-stained monuments that are throughout this location. To offset the grays and the gloominess are these vibrant azaleas and plenty of other flowers that are just bursting with color when they bloom in the spring and summer. The 100 acres of this special place have stirred the emotions of generations of visitors over quite a few years. But apparently you're gonna feel something stirring you the minute you approach the main gate. And not because of a bran muffin or coffee. A novel that subsequently became a major motion picture that was published in 1994 owes a lot to the cemetery and vice versa. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is a first-person account of life in the Old South, interwoven with a mystery that casts Savannah as its backdrop, and features the statue of a girl holding 2 small bowls, one in each hand on the front cover. Legend has it that the statue is haunted by the ghost of Lorraine Greenman, the little one who posed for the artist. Little Wendy, as the statue is also referred to, once stood sentinel over the Trostel family plot, but she became so idolized as a result of her newfound fame, and it wasn't even central to the book's plot, that the owners donated the statue to Savannah's Museum of Art to just avoid destruction and for safety. Another famous sculpture that has elicited some crazy stories or legends, depending on your point of view, is that of Gracie Watson, or as she is affectionately known, Little Gracie. This young one died of pneumonia and was memorialized in marble by artist John Waltz from nothing but a photograph. And for years, people have reported seeing a little one that fits her description playing around. The legend claims that she appears as a normal living one in a white dress who vanishes without a trace when you get too close. And to some, she still lives. Visitors leave toys for her to play with, especially around Christmas time, and if you move them or you take them away, she's gonna cry tears of human redness. So leave her toys alone. Let her play with them. What harm is it doing you? Alright, let's see if I pronounce this properly. Kilcassew Courthouse. I tried, folks, I really did. According to the local parish clerk of courts, the main part of the courthouse building was built in 1912. It is on the National Register of Historic Places, while an addition was tacked on in the mid-90s. A lot of folks believe that the courthouse is haunted, and that the individual whose ghost is doing that haunting is a convicted killer by the name of Toni Jo Henry. She was the only woman to be executed in the electric chair in Louisiana history, unless somebody forgot to put a name down, and it just so happens that the flip of the switch that led to her death happened here. Allow me to give you some context on her. For starters, she didn't really have an easy start in life. Her mother died when she was young, prompting her father to remarry, and Toni was not a fan of the new living arrangement, wanted to go live with an aunt. Why? Well, her dad wasn't great. He hurt her, prompting her to just run away instead. She fell into a world of crime, substances, and intercourse work. She was working at a brothel when she met a man named Claude Cowboy Henry. According to the local Gazette, Henry was a former boxer who, after leaving the ring, found himself living a life of crime. The two fell in love, and the cowboy seems to have treated Toni well. She was in the clutches of substance addiction when they met, but upon marrying, they were like, let's move to California. Let's try and kick that. However, they decided to go back to Texas for a minute, and Cowboy was arrested for a killing that he had committed before the couple had married. And he received a 50-year sentence for his crime. Toni Jo was still madly in love and was like, let's figure out how to get you out of jail. She found herself an accomplice for this plot, a man named Harold Burks, who went by Archie. Burks had served time in the same prison that the cowboy was incarcerated in. And Toni was like, let's use that knowledge. The first step? Let's rob a bank. Because why not? Toni and Burks encountered a man named Joseph P. Calloway, who was delivering a car and was like, okay, I'll give you a ride. According to the local Gazette, they were like, we're gonna hijack this car and use it as a getaway vehicle. But sadly, they killed Calloway. After Toni's arrest, the heinous nature of her crimes, coupled with her good looks and the fact that the death penalty was on the table, her trial became a media sensation. She was found guilty, sentenced to death, which was upheld after several appeals. She was executed in the electric chair on November 28th of 1942. And nowadays, well, her ghost is just hanging around the courthouse. According to various sources, there have been reports of unexplainable screams, electrical mishaps, and the smell of cheap perfume. But there's another odor sometimes reported at the courthouse that is far more disturbing and fitting to the story and death of Tony Joe Henry, the unexplainable smell of burning hair. Alrighty folks, we're going to end today with the Dock Street Theater in Charleston, South Carolina. This theater, which is not located on Dock Street, but on Church Street, is pretty neat. One quirky fact is that at one time it was actually a hotel. It is now technically the last surviving hotel. Guests of the theater have claimed to see spirits roaming about. We've got sightings of ghostly apparitions in the rafters, apparitions on the stage, and a lot of folks are like, were they failed actors? Were they admirers of the theater? Was there something more tragic? Well, we know there's been a lot of sightings, but there's two particular spirits that have been seen more than any of the others. One of them is believed to be Junius Brutus Booth, the father of the infamous presidential assassin. No one's really sure why his ghost is haunting the theater, because aside from performing there with his theater troupe, and apparently he tried to kill the manager of the hotel, he doesn't have any other strong ties to the building. But the most frequently spotted ghost at this lovely theater is Nettie, who lived in Charleston during the 1800s and could usually be found at the Planters Hotel. She wasn't a guest or a member of the staff, she was a bit of a freelancer. What was her occupation? The world's oldest profession. Poor thing was killed by a bolt of lightning, leading to a sudden and unexpected death, leaving her with unfinished business that I guess nobody's been able to help her with yet. The ghost of Nettie can be seen gliding around aimlessly throughout the entire theater. Some of those who have caught a glimpse of her claim that she was wearing a tattered yet vibrantly colored red dress. The mystery of the disappearance of Phyllis Ann Flynn is one that lingers, casting a shadow over the years that have passed since that fateful night in May of 1988, which was before I was born. It's a puzzle that has defied resolution, leaving family and investigators grasping at straws in their quest for answers. After a birthday celebration at the Hotel Yorba in Detroit, Flynn vanished without a trace. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance are as mysterious as the hotel itself. She had requested that her father pick her up, a plea that would echo throughout the years as a haunting reminder of the unanswered questions. Now, the timeline of events is hauntingly sparse. A few days after her birthday, Flynn called home, signaling her desire to be retrieved from the Hotel Yorba. However, when her father arrived, she had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind an eerie void, and nobody has heard from her since. In the years that followed, the case went cold, a perplexing enigma with no breakthroughs. The detective assigned to Flynn's case retired, and the shadows seemed to close in on the scant leads. But even as the official investigation drew to a close, a glimmer of hope persisted among those determined to unravel the mystery. A family friend and a diligent Michigan State police detective breathed some new life into the cold case back in 2014, so about a decade ago, reigniting the flame of inquiry. The Community United Effort Center for Missing Persons brought national attention to Flynn's disappearance, thrusting it into the spotlight of awareness-building efforts. The passage of time has not dimmed the resolve of those seeking closure. The Missing in Michigan campaign, led by Detective Sarah Krebs, has tirelessly worked to unearth fresh clues. The story of Phyllis Flynn found its place on billboards, a visual plea for information that could hopefully pierce through the fog of uncertainty. But to this day, the question remains: what happened at the Hotel Yorba? The void left by Flynn's disappearance resonates, a silent call for answers. The reward offered by Crime Stoppers of Michigan stands as an incentive, a monetary beacon beckoning anybody with information to step forward. But with the passage of 36 years, the harsh reality is lingering. Flynn's family, against the odds, clings to hope that she might still be alive. But sadly, the Hotel Yorba, once a backdrop to a birthday celebration, now stands as a silent witness to a disappearance that continues to baffle those who seek resolution. So I don't exactly have a name for this next hotel, outside of knowing that it's somewhere in the UK. I know, vague, but it was worth telling today. Imagine a place shrouded in whispers and veiled in the unknown. A hotel that, over the years, has become an unsettling enigma, a backdrop to a haunting mystery that eludes comprehension. It's not your typical story. It's a tale woven with threads of uncertainty and shadowed by the inexplicable disappearances of 66 young people. Nestled in the heart of the countryside, this hotel, with its weathered facade, stands as a testament to a history stained by the unexplained. The corridors echo with the distant laugh of young people who once roamed freely, their footsteps now silenced by a force that transcends the boundaries of our understanding. The first whispers of the mystery dates way back, like decades, a quiet murmur amongst locals who traded stories of curious occurrences. As time unfolded, so did the tales of the vanished youths, leaving a chilling imprint on the history of this seemingly ordinary establishment. Each disappearance, if we're going to compare it to something, maybe a jigsaw piece missing from a larger puzzle, paints a spectral image of uncertainty. The missing people, diverse in their backgrounds, ages, and stories, all converge at this point, their common thread being a vanishing act that perplexes even the most seasoned investigators. The authorities, puzzled and haunted by the lack of clues, have combed through the hotel's history, interviewed witnesses, scrutinized every nook and cranny, but they've got nothing. The answers remain elusive, like ghosts slipping through the fingers of those who seek them. The hotel itself, with its creaking floorboards and flickering lights, becomes a stage where the mundane collides with the mysterious. An invisible hand seems to orchestrate a malevolent symphony, leaving behind a disconcerting silence in the wake of each disappearance. The local community, once welcoming, now gazes upon the hotel with a mix of fear and curiosity. Whispers in the wind suggest that the place holds secrets, that it harbors an otherworldly energy, indifferent to the laws of our reality. As the count of those who have vanished climbed, the hotel's reputation transformed. It became more than bricks and mortar. It was just this living, breathing entity with a story. The rooms, once filled with the innocent laughter of youth, now resonate with an eerie stillness, a reminder of those who stepped into the shadows and never returned. Yeah, that's not somewhere I want to visit. No thank you, I'll leave the mysteries there. I don't need to unravel them. Now next up we have a legend that I believe to be true. Many years ago, an English woman and her daughter, at the conclusion of a tour in the Near East, arrived at a Paris hotel at the time of the exhibition. They were given separate rooms, one above the other. Trust me, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as my mother. After resting for a few hours, the daughter went to go see her mother, but the room was empty and completely altered. Like new wallpaper, new furniture, new everything. She was panicking. She called the maid and then the manager, and the manager was like, "You're under a delusion. When you arrived at this hotel, you were quite alone." But the girl was like, "No, we signed our names in the visitor's book, mother and I." So they brought out the visitor's book, and above the daughter's name, what the mother had signed, was a signature of a stranger. Now, it wasn't until about a year later that the daughter learned that her mother had died suddenly of the plague, and that in order to save Paris from, crazy panic and the exhibition from absolute ruin, it was hurriedly agreed by the authorities that the death should be completely hushed up, and that the daughter should be made to believe, by the repeated denials of hotel servants, hotel managers, and cabmen, and the proofs of, the changed room and the altered visitor's book, that her unfortunate mother never reached the hotel. Imagine, you go to take a nap and you wake up and all of a sudden, okay, mom's gone, and you're Delulu. The girl allegedly found out the truth in a letter from a chambermaid. So when the story was originally told at a dinner at the house of Arthur Balfour, at the time, British Prime Minister, they were all hanging out, and Balfour was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna guess the ending." Now, a journalist for the Pall Mall Gazette, I think this was around 1913, talked to the author who originally published the tale, a Mr. Clement K. Shorter, noting by this time, of course, we've all heard the story. What's the truth to it? And Mr. Shorter's like, "No, I believe it happened. It is a heck of a lot easier to believe that it happened than it was invented." And given an illness under precisely the same circumstances, the French police authorities are the only police authorities in the world who are equal to coping with it so brilliantly. I can't imagine waking up and being told, "Hey, you're completely wrong." No thank you. Now for a tale that cursed me to my core, Liz, Sarah, and the Cosmos Resort. 2 years ago, a seemingly ordinary vacation turned into a nightmarish odyssey for a pair of friends, Liz and Sarah. The backdrop? A hotel that, despite its outward appearance of renovation and cheerfulness, concealed a darkness that would shake the very core of their existence. So the girls went in the lobby, they're like, "Okay, we're gonna go sign in." But there was this feeling of unease that was just sort of everywhere in the air. The check-in process was marked by odd glances and a peculiar conversation with the hotel staff. But they got upgraded. Woohoo! Room 347. This room with a view that won Sarah over. Seemed like, okay, things are getting better. Maybe my gut's just off. Maybe I need a nap. The first night was uneventful for Sarah, but for Liz, the shadows whispered secrets that kept her awake. Strange scratching noises emanated from behind the walls, which, yikes, that's not a soundtrack I want when I'm trying to sleep. And it only got worse as the days went on. A hidden door, concealed behind a nightstand, revealed a narrow, ominous space that reeked of rust and bleach. Yeah, that's terrifying. As Sarah delved deeper into the mystery, she discovered a network of tunnels, a dark labyrinth that extended beneath the hotel. The eerie passageways, laden with the stench of decay, hinted at a sinister purpose, one that became much more apparent as time went on. Liz's disappearance on the final night of their stay plunged Sarah into a desperate search for answers. The hotel staff's nonchalant response and the dismissive attitude of the police created an air of conspiracy. Sure, because the hidden door that led to under the hotel with the stench of decay wasn't enough. Determined to unravel the enigma, Sarah returned to the haunted hotel, guided by an invitation that seemed to taunt her, if you will. The nights after became a harrowing exploration of the hotel's hidden layers. The H sections, neglected and avoided, hinted at a malevolence that defied, my brain. The discovery of a bricked-up elevator shaft and the disturbing encounters in the narrow tunnels hinted at a malevolent force that lurked within the hotel's very foundation. So, fast forward, it's the final night, and in a desperate attempt to retrace Liz's steps, Sarah was led to an encounter with entities that, weren't of this world. Liz, or a distorted version of her, beckoned from the shadows. The nightmarish entities, with eyes that pierce the darkness, pursued Sarah through the dilapidated corridors, transforming the once grand ballroom into a grotesque spectacle. Now this whole mess reached its climax on the mysterious 7th floor. The revelation that Liz's encounter in the tunnel had birthed something malevolent. Something that wore her face, but harbored unspeakable horrors. Yeah, it painted a bit of a grim picture. The hotel's twisted reality, where time and space lost coherence, left poor Sarah grappling with a profound sense of dread. Now, this sad story concludes with Sarah's escape, but the psychological scars, they run deep. The fear of encountering those otherworldly entities, of witnessing the distorted face of Liz, yeah, that's gonna linger like a memory you don't want to have. The hotel, now a malevolent entity in its own right, kind of stands as a thin veil that separates our world from the other world, and not one you want to go near. Time to travel over to the heart of Santa Fe, and no, that isn't a cue for Newsies and Rent fans, so hush. Nestled within the walls of the La Posada Hotel lies a tale that, well, it's gonna give you some nightmares, folks. It's a narrative steeped in mystery, spectral apparitions, and unexplained phenomena. Cool, we got the whole trifecta. Room 256, once the abode of Julia Staub, echoes with the whispers of a bygone era, where the living and the dead seem to converge in a dance of the paranormal. Is it a ballet? So Chuck Barone, a vigilant security guard, recounted an eerie encounter that unfolded in this specific room of the hotel. In the company of a bellhop and a group of tourists, they approached said room, room 256, responding to a mysterious voice emanating from within. "I'm in here," it beckoned, yet upon investigation, the room was empty, with its windows locked from the inside, so there was no getting out of there. There was a phantom presence. Unseen, but you felt it. The paranormal enigma extended way beyond Chuck's story, by the way. His son John, a fellow guardian of the hotel's secrets, if you will, witnessed a ghostly face in the men's room mirror. It was a woman's face, staring back at him, sending a shiver right down his spine, and this inexplicable encounter left him pale and shaken, which, yeah, that tracks. Ross Weisenhoff, once a skeptic, found himself entangled in the spectral tapestry of the hotel as well. Awakening in the middle of the night, he noticed a luminescent figure at the foot of his bed. This entity morphed into the ethereal form of a woman, fixating on him with an otherworldly gaze. Now this encounter shattered his skepticism, prompting a swift, "I'm getting out of here," as you do. The genesis of these ghostly manifestations lies in the tragic history of Julia, the lady of the mansion turned spectral hostess. She was once the vibrant center of Santa Fe's social tapestry, but fell into self-imposed exile after the loss of her 8th spawn. The Grand Mansion, a testament to love and opulence, transformed into the La Posada Hotel in 1936. Enter Christopher Chacon, a seeker of truth from the Organization of Scientific Investigation and Research. Alongside a team of experts, he delved into the paranormal intricacies of the hotel. Physical, psychological, and electrical examinations were conducted, leaving no stone unturned. 12 hours in isolation within the bedroom that's, doing all the bad things, monitoring the environment for any spectral stirrings. Infrared technology and night vision equipment were brought in, but despite the diligence, the source of the haunting remained elusive. Which, okay, we'll let you be. Ghosty ladies can do what you want. I would like to live.
Kicking off the list at number 5, the Landmark Inn. Located in the upper peninsula of Michigan, right around Lake Superior, you'll find the Landmark Inn. Yeah, nice and cute and cozy. Come on in, take your coat off, stay a while. This fancy hotel was originally built in 1930 as a luxury accommodation for wealthy business owners from all around the United States. Sounds like a good time. Let's gather, let's talk shop around candles. These business owners would visit the Landmark to check on their business interests, all that good stuff. Though for its 100 years being open to guests, the hotel has had multiple reports of, you guessed it, ghosts and paranormal activity. It's so common at the Landmark Inn that the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, they make trips out to the hotel quite often just to check in and be like, hey, how's it going? And they put on their gadgets and they just check in on them. They can rely on them. The hotel's 6th floor is home to one of the saddest stories the hotel has ever seen. This story takes place in the 1930s when the hotel was a new, lively social and cultural center in town. The story revolves around a ship worker who fell in love with a local librarian and conducted their love affair in the Lilac Room. Yeah, of all places, of course, let's go meet the Lilac Room. Sounds beautiful. And that was where the man was staying. Perfect place to meet. The couple was said to have a planned wedding upon his return from the last voyage on the sometimes treacherous Lake Superior. Unfortunately, their love affair ended in tragedy when his ship met with a storm and sank to the bottom of a lake. He never returned to the shore, and the librarian mourned the man in said Lilac Room, eventually dying herself of a broken heart. The heartbreaking story comes with many reports of the Lilac Room now being haunted. Yeah, rightfully so. As a large number of guests has reported hearing cries and whispers from a female. The female is also seen by many guests and workers on the 6th floor near the lilac room, crying and mourning for her loved one. A less romantic story that is associated with the hotel goes back to when it was even finished being built. During construction, a man ended the life of his girlfriend due to anger and jealousy, and this took place right after she told him about her past boyfriends and their relationship history, just normal stuff that he flipped out on, just a monster. And since the hotel was still being built, to conceal the evidence, the man buried her in the unfinished basement. Just horrible stuff. You knew I was going there and you're like, oh, please don't. To this day, decades later, visitors and employees report hearing cries from that basement, and some report hearing whispers from a female voice asking for them to find her body. I just got goosebumps. That's real goosebumps. No matter how much time goes by, these two women, heartbroken for different reasons, still haunt said hotel today. Number 4, Michigan Bell Telephone Building. The Bell Telephone Building can be found in downtown Grand Rapids. It's known from the legend that the building is haunted by 2 ghosts. It's always 2, eh? Always gotta have pairs. Good things come in pairs. Even demons. These spirits have consistently caused chaos throughout the buildings for years in their own unique personal way. We love it. We love a unique ghost. The spirits that haunt the Bell Building are rumored to be Warren and Virginia Randall, a couple who used to reside in the Grand Rapids. Back in 1907, they moved from Detroit and bought the Judd White Mansion in Grand Rapids, which has now been torn down and built into what we now know as the Bell Telephone Building. So a lot of history there already. Over the years of living in this new house, Warren and Virginia's relationship started to crumble as Warren became very strange and paranoid almost, creating hardships in their relationship. In 1908, Virginia became tired of Warren's strange and aggressive behavior, so she decided, I'm out of here, peace. She left him. One night, 3 years after they were separated, Warren convinced Virginia into taking a car ride with them, hoping to get back together, maybe talk it out. The two of them ended up at the Judd White House, where their verbal disagreement turned horrible, and Warren sadly took the life of Virginia. Then he proceeded to end his own life in the very same moment. The tragic accident that happened in the Judd White House became public knowledge, and the house was left empty with no one wanting to occupy it. Yeah, more than fair. I'm like, what's rent? Also, what happened? No. The house remained abandoned for 10 years after the accident until they finally just decided to tear the thing down completely. Thus, in 1924, they built the Bell Telephone Building on the ground, which still is in operation today. Yeah, they didn't tear that one down. That one's still going strong. Due to the horrifying scenes that happened on the grounds of the Bell Building, many claim that the spirits of Randall and Virginia still remain, haunting the new building. Some say that ghosts move into the new building and remain there to this day. I mean, I think that's possible. Ghosts like to move. They can go through walls. They can probably relocate. Through the years of operation in the office building, visitors and employees all report being harassed by strange late-night calls, which have been traced back to be coming from inside of the building itself. Yeah, inside the house. You guessed it. It's upstairs. That's so scary. Due to this and the strange, eerie feelings that the employees feel while they're even working, it's safe to say Randall and Virginia may remain on the grounds. Most likely. They're definitely there. It sounds like they're there. They're for sure there. Number 3, the Henderson Castle. Established in 1895, this castle is a hub for many spirits and paranormal activity. I mean, it's a castle. The original owners, Frank and Mary Henderson, are said to haunt the castle as they passed away back in 1899. Yeah, I wouldn't want to leave either, living or dead. Additionally, other spirits are said to reside in the castle, a young girl and a dog. Yeah, a dog! We've got a dog ghost. How do you deal with that? Ghost barks? That'd be so scary. In 2005, the castle was occupied by Peter Livingstone McNellis and his family. When the family resided in the castle, Livingstone's son, Vincent, before anyone else had ever reported anything strange happening in the house, he said that he saw an apparition of a figure in the Victorian room, originally the changing room for one Mary Henderson. The son said while pointing at a picture of a woman dressed in an old period clothing, some Victorian clothing, that was the woman he saw wearing that same clothing. I would throw up. If someone ever said that, I'd be like, oh, this Victorian painting? And one former innkeeper who stayed at the castle each night told Livingstone on numerous occasions that she also felt a presence coming up and down the staircase, a movement passing her on the stairs when she would walk by. Ugh, these are scary. Top 5 is like, or top 10 is scary fish. This is hard. This is some scary stuff. 9 a.m. I'm already getting spooked. While now the castle is being used for a bed and breakfast, guests have fallen victim to ghosts as well. Yeah, it's not over yet. The Henderson Castle is a very paranormal active ground that many ghost hunters have investigated, and they've confirmed, in fact, that it's haunted by spirits. I trust them. The people that can go into these castles and physically do this, I'm like, yep, I trust your opinion, whatever. He just comes out, he's like, haunted. We're like, thanks, Daryl. This has been confirmed as these ghosts have interacted with many paranormal investigator teams, in addition to guests and employees of the castle. Yeah, they're just harassing everyone. The ghosts seem to be friendly, not evil whatsoever, so that's a good side, I guess, to being haunted by ghosts. They have been known to speak and physically touch guests and employees. Just they touch them on their back, side, shoulder, always in the back. You never see it coming. It's always in this region. Not only that, but there's also been reports of radios making weird noises or turning on by themselves, even though they're either unplugged or just either turned off. Both bad, both scary. Guests and employees have also reported hearing footsteps upstairs, slamming doors from unexplainable sources, and some ghosts have been wearing the clothes that they wore while they were alive. Clothes that they wore while they died in, probably. As the spirit of Mary Henderson has been reported as many guests at the top of the staircase, wearing her usual getup. Imagine being like a clown, like a jester, and then you die in that, and that's what you look like as a ghost. You're like, what? I was doing a mascot gig. I don't want to look like a shark forever. Number 2, Allegan Lodge. The old Allegan Lodge was built in 1909 and was used as a psychiatric and TB hospital until its closure in 1948. The lodge was a former hospital that was frequented by mobster Al Capone, and one that many say is haunted by at least 7 different ghosts. Yeah, you thought 2 was bad. Add 5 more. Now we got 7 ghosts. And it's currently on the auction block in Allegan. If you have a lot of money and bravery, there you go. While the structure was originally built by physician John Robinson in 1909, somewhere in the 1920s, it was sold to a doctor from the Chicago area who had allegedly had underworld ties. That's a great doctor. That's just who you want working on your pancreas. Brought pancreas back today. The facility was supposedly frequented by mafia figures such as Al Capone, the Prohibition-era Chicago mob boss, and his men. Yeah, well, they needed medical attention or when they simply needed to get away from Chicago, this is where they'd go. The old Elks Lodge. Al Capone. He's like, oh, it's cozy. They have great soup. Years later, it was used as an Eagles Lodge and an Elks Lodge. And in 2010, it was acquired by an Allegan woman who began renovating the property, but now she wants to sell it. Yeah, can't imagine why. Because one of the former doctors who owns the lodge had underworld ties, maybe? Something like that? I don't know. It led to a lot of people believing that there's a lot of undercover stuff about this lodge. It's still happening to this day. I don't know why I'm doing this like it's like over there, but I'm like, there's something going on in that lodge, especially as it's known to hold 7 different paranormal entities, like I mentioned previously. For many years, employees and visitors have told stories of spirits who relentlessly roam the building. Some of the paranormal activity that has been experienced here includes cabinets opening up by themselves in the kitchen, sounds of children laughing, it's always calming in the morning, photographic anomalies captured throughout the building, and like you name it, shadowy figures in the basement, all bad. Notably where the morgue was located, the basement, good stuff, a lot of stuff happening in there. They'd be knocking on the front door, indiscernible conversations, and ringing at the doorbell when no one was present. Yeah, good stuff. Again, I have goosebumps, they're back. Guests also heard footsteps and the sound of hospital activity long after being used as one. They'd also see full-bodied apparitions of children. They would just see ghost children. That would be it. I wouldn't have to see any more. I would just see the ghost children and be like, again, see ya. Like that's. And finally, number 1, Pointe Aux Barques Lighthouse. There are plenty of lighthouses in Michigan, and plenty of them are rumored to be haunted, of course, because they're lighthouses and they're creepy, as they normally are. And this one is no exception. Built in 1847, real old, lot of history with this one. The lighthouse is located on Pointe Aux Barques. As the legend goes, early to mid 1800s, Peter Shook had been Pointe Aux Barques' first lighthouse keeper. He was the OG. In 1849, Peter drowned while he and a couple of friends were sailing to Port Huron to pick up supplies for the lighthouse. He left behind 8 kids and his wife Catherine, and she took over at that point for Peter's duties, thus becoming Michigan's first female lighthouse keeper. Since then, people have claimed to see the spirit of Catherine walking along the edge of a cliff dressed in mourning clothes, as she is still heartbroken by the loss of her lover, of course. As we talked about earlier, ghosts like to wear the things that they were, that they passed away in. Again, would hate to be a clown outfit, that would suck. She had also been spotted in the window of the 2nd floor wearing an apron, along with an apparition being seen, footsteps ascending and descending the tower stairs, and giggling has also been heard. Yeah, you hear giggling and there's cold spots, therefore haunted, for sure haunted. And the smell of burnt tobacco has also been wafting through the air many a times. Lighthouses are pretty stressful, more than fair. When paranormal investigators, specifically the Southeast Michigan Paranormal Society team, when they had a 2-day intensive investigation after their search, they concluded that they believe that there is every reason for the lighthouse to be haunted. The investigators did some electric voice phenomenon work in the living room, and then they heard loud thuds from overheard. Like, where did they get this gear from, Like, I want this gear. I have some questions of myself going on in the apartment. I want to swing it around a bit. A sound of something scraping along the floor as well, and additionally, during their investigation, the rocking chair had moved 2 feet and was still moving. Just love to keep rocking around. We love that. We love haunted rocking chairs. We love unexplainable forces. While they were upstairs, they also reported hearing heavy footsteps from another unknown source. So many ghosts, there's rocking chairs, people moving around, working in the basement. It doesn't sound like the afterlife is a peaceful one, if I'm being honest. Sounds like there's a lot of to do after you die. I'm not really looking forward to it. I thought I could just kind of float around in your paintings, but now it sounds like I'm gonna have to go and wear my mourning clothes. Who knows?
Number 5 on this list is the Thunderbird Youth Academy. The Thunderbird Youth Academy is located in Pryor and is deeply haunted with the ghosts of students who have long passed. Back in 1942, it suffered a horrible tragedy where a lot of the children staying here passed away. Back then it was an orphanage, and it was still years before it would become a military school. It got hit hard with a devastating tornado that the building simply wasn't ready for. Tons of the children who lived there perished due to the storm, and now their ghosts are said to linger here. Stories where people will wake up in their beds and find literally other children lying in them staring directly at them are far too common. These stories also don't even factor in one of the most famous ghosts there, Hector. Hector is a young boy who haunts the 3rd Platoon building. Hector's story is far more graphic than the other children who died. It's not confirmed, but some say that the cook took Hector's life and did it in a fashion that I can't go into detail on YouTube about. Either way, now his spirit forever haunts this building and all of those who reside in it. I personally would never want to go to military school anyways as a kid, but having it be haunted would make it even worse. Number 4 on this list is the Tulsa Theater. It's weird how some places attract ghosts and spirits more than others. Theaters are one of the most prominent spots for paranormal presences, and this theater is no exception. News Oklahoma says, Tulsa Theater, formerly known as Brady Theater, used to be a vaudeville house providing entertainment to audiences. This space went through a lot over the years, including being abandoned and almost destroyed. But after renovations and a name change, the Tulsa Theater reopened. Legend is the space is haunted by an Italian opera singer named Enrico Caruso. Caruso took in the sights around town while in Tulsa to perform. He wanted to see the oil wells and how they made them, said French. And as they came back, it was raining, it was cold, miserable, and the car broke down. Despite already being sick, Caruso made the journey back on foot in the rain to give what turned out to be his last performance ever. He had a great performance according to history, French said. It was one of his best. Standing ovations in the whole 9 yards. Unfortunately, after returning to Italy, Caruso died. French said many say Tulsa caused Caruso's demise, and that's why it's believed he haunts the theater. Even Caruso's manager named Tulsa as the reason for his death. But it goes deeper than just Caruso. When it was the Brady Theater, the building is rumored to have played a role in the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. I mean, it played a huge role. It housed some of the victims. There are rumors they died inside and some other horrible things that happened to them, French said. We actually captured electronic video phenomena evidence that almost confirms all of the stories there. The Tulsa Race Massacre was a horrible display of hate and racism. On May 31st in 1921, a bunch of white residents who had been given weapons by city officials attacked a bunch of black residents. This incident lasted over 24 hours and saw more than 800 people get injured and at least 36 people die. A horrifying tragedy that never should have occurred. It's no wonder that any place tied to this incident could be haunted. Number 3 on this list is the Hex House. Yeah, that's right guys, this place is literally called the Hex House, so it's no wonder why it's making the list. News Oklahoma says again, so this is something we feature in our serial killer tour. The new Hex House is inspired by the home that used to belong to Carol Ann Smith. French said the original Hex House, located at 10 East 21st Street, has negative energy attached. I mean, the things that she did with her nephew. They were dumping hot water on people that lived in the duplex next to them. There's also that whole history of her keeping those 2 hostages in the basement and kind of hypnotizing them, putting hexes on them. Yes, it's insane, said French. Claims of windshield wipers or stereos going on while the car is off are frequent if parked nearby. French even says they tested the theory during a tour and claimed she never did it again. We turned the bus off, but then it wouldn't start back up. It wasn't until a lady said she called Carol Ann a bad name and then she apologized. As soon as she was done, the bus came immediately back on, French says. The reason this house is on the killer tour list is due to what went down in 1928, guys. John Blymier, after receiving consultation from a woman named Nellie Knoll, thought that he had been cursed by another man named Nelson Raymer. John and some of his friends broke into the home, which is the Hex House, and then brutally killed Nelson. After they did this, they tried to set the house on fire, but it actually didn't burn. Since then, it's been a hotspot for ghosts, specifically that of Nelson Raymer. Number 2 on this list is the Stone Lion Inn Bed and Breakfast. This is definitely not the Airbnb you want to be booking for you and your pals for that relaxing weekend getaway you've been picturing. Travel Oklahoma says, stay at the Stone Lion Inn Bed and Breakfast in Guthrie at your own risk, as a mischievous ghost child has been seen and felt throughout the home. The spirit, said to be that of 8-year-old Irene Houghton, has been known to squeeze the toes of sleeping guests or even crawl into bed with them. The eerie tap 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 of a child's footsteps has also been heard leading from the 2nd floor to the 3rd. According to legend, the 8,000 square foot home was where the child met her fate when a nurse her with cough syrup containing them. The family later moved on, but little Irene refused to leave. After the Houghton family moved out, the home changed into a boarding house and then a funeral home. Paranormal investigative teams have encountered several other ghosts, including a strong male entity who lingers in the basement where the morgue once was. Through the years of people staying here, there have been tons of reports of sightings and interactions with ghostly entities. As mentioned, it's pretty normal to be visited by Irene, the ghost of the young girl who passed here. A bit of a rarer encounter is that of a ghostly music box, though. The owner, Becky, has come out and said, "One of my guests just the other day came out of this room and said, all night long I heard this music box." Now, it's unclear whether one of the ghosts was playing this music box or if the box just sort of started on its own, but that would definitely be enough to keep me awake if I was that guest. Pictures, videos, and voice recordings have all been captured here by paranormal investigators many times. It was first investigated by a paranormal specialist 18 years ago, and since then it's been a hotspot for all ghost hunters alike to check out. Unless you're well versed in dealings with spirits, I'd pick a different Airbnb for you and your buddies. And number 1 on this list is Guthrie's Boys Home. This site started out as an orphanage in 1923 when it was built. Now, becoming an orphan would truly be a horrible experience that I can't even begin to understand, but I can guarantee you that it would have been far worse if you got sent to this orphanage. That's because of the horrible atrocities committed here. There is no denying that the maid who worked here back then was sick. Mentally sick, deranged to a point where she felt a desire to these young orphans. It's believed that she would often abuse these innocent children in any number of ways. Now, this isn't confirmed, but these are rumors. It's also thought that she even took the life of a few people while she was working here and made it look like an accident. This all culminated one day when she finally took her own life by jumping out of the bell tower and falling to her death. This has obviously led to some spiritual presences staying behind. Lucky for all of us, it's not the spirit of this sick old maid who died. However, as sad as it is, it's the spirits of some of these children here who were wronged. There is apparently one girl who appears to visitors and begs for safety. Crying and screaming children can be heard echoing throughout the building at all hours of the day. The sounds of little feet running up and down the halls are regularly reported as well. Believe it or not, this isn't enough to drive people away though, because it's a popular wedding spot. Definitely not the area I would choose to get married if it was up to me though. Number 5 on this list is the Carolina Inn. This inn has actually been voted one of the most haunted in America by a few different lists. The University of North Carolina says the Carolina Inn was built in 1924 and quickly became a popular hotel for visitors and graduates of the university. In 1948, the Carolina Inn's most long-lasting guests checked in and apparently never left. Dr. William Jacox was a fun-loving man with a witty sense of humor, had recently retired from practicing medicine, and decided to make the Carolina Inn his final home. He lived in room 252 for 17 years before his death in 1965. As shared by the Carolina Inn, guests that have stayed in Jacox's old room report being inexplicably locked out of the suite. One time, the lock was so stubborn that a workman had to use a ladder to break into the room. Visitors have also noticed strange occurrences such as messy bath mats and previously closed curtains being pulled wide open. Some have encountered the smell of freshly cut flowers despite none being in the room, and felt their bodies become strangely cold for no apparent reason. This is only part of the stuff that goes down at this room as well, guys. Some people have reported seeing a poorly dressed man approach them looking for an unlocked door, and then if they show it to him, he runs away screaming. It's thought that this is the ghost of Dr. William Jacques. I don't know why unlocked doors scare this dude so much, but anyone who's gonna spend 17 years in this hotel is probably a bit of a weird dude. Unless you want to deal with a crazy old doctor ghost messing with you all vacation, I'd stay at a different inn. Number 4 on this list is the new Hanover County Library. I don't know why, guys, but something about haunted libraries is just so intriguing to me. Like, it just seems so mystical and mysterious, I guess. This haunted library is located right in Wilmington. There is a woman that haunts this place who's believed to be a patron. Apparently, she used to donate quite generously to this library, and in death doesn't want to leave it behind. She isn't the only ghost that walks the halls here and haunts the books. There's a male poltergeist who makes his presence quite known as well. He apparently died in a duel that happened here many years ago before this land was turned into a library. Nowadays, these two ghosts make it very hard to do any serious learning or studying considering they haunt the place so much. The woman isn't too bad, she just shows up and looks super creepy, but from my reading, she only actually punishes those who cause harm to the library or make fun of it. Those who come here to learn and to read, she leaves them be for the most part. The man, however, is certainly quite the pest. He often messes with those that come here and makes it very difficult for people to accomplish anything. I love libraries, I think that we should all go to them more often, but maybe just not this one specifically. Number 3 on this list is Fort Fisher. Fort Fisher was a critical fort during the American Civil War. It was used by the Confederate Army and was pretty instrumental for them from 1861 to 1865. This fort was used to protect an important trade post there that the Army needed. They defended this place for those 4 years, but then in 1865, the Union Army came in and was finally able to capture it. This battle was a very bloody one and was actually huge for the Union Army and the overall scope of the war. Apparently, there was a lot of death at this fort, and that death, it's never really gone away. Now, this fort is teeming with paranormal activity. Visitors will often report hearing gunshots coming from thin air. The sounds of many footsteps all running at once as if people were charging ahead. Orbs of energy appear in front of them from no apparent source. There are 2 very famous ghosts that haunt this place as well, Robert E. Harrell and General William Whitling. Robert was apparently an outcast who died under mysterious circumstances and has not been able to rest since. The general was actually taken prisoner and killed at Fort Columbus, but he returned to this place because he feels regret for how he failed in life. He was apparently responsible for defending this place and was not capable of doing so. A very haunted fort that I wouldn't recommend going to. Number 2 on this list is Lydia's Bridge. Who is Lydia and why does she have a bridge and why is it haunted? Well, Lydia is quite the famous ghost. This is a true ghost. Like, when you think of a ghost and a ghost story, this meets all the criteria for a good one. Spectrum Local News says, people traveling between Jamestown and Greensboro on US Highway 70A said they've encountered the ghost of Lydia, a hitchhiker. If she's picked up, she gets into the car and vanishes before she reaches the requested destination. Various versions of the Lydia legend have been passed along over the years, and there are apparently 11 different versions of the story that are set in North Carolina. It's common for folks to go ghost hunting for Lydia near the bridge. In the book, Looking for Lydia, historians Michael Reniger and Amy Greer cite the 1923 death of Annie C. Johnson as the real-life Lydia who died after a car flipped in 1920. That is a story with some history, man. Literally since the 1920s this has been going on, and there are 11 different versions of the story. A story like this isn't just made up. It's not just something that one person posted on Creepypasta that became a thing. No, this has been part of the identity of North Carolina for a century. Countless people have picked up this woman and then had her disappear right before their very eyes. Car accidents have happened from people driving this woman and then getting so shocked that they spin off the road when she disappears. Lydia, or Annie, is a real ghost who stalks drivers along this road and especially this bridge. Although she isn't inherently evil in nature, as I said before, accidents have happened when people realize they were just driving a ghost around. I have no idea where Lydia is trying to get to, but trust me, you probably don't want to be the person to take her there. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Devil's Tramping Grounds. This is in reference to a very strange patch of soil in North Carolina. For decades, this circle of dirt has allowed nothing to grow on it at all, whilst the area surrounding it is home to luscious wildlife. The Sun Journal says regional legend maintains that Satan frequents the area on his nightly walks, pacing the circle as he contemplates his nefarious deeds. Normal vegetation surrounds the circle, but only a wiry grass grows inside it, and no plant life of any kind can be found on the path itself. Visitors have also claimed to see red glowing eyes in the circle. Now, there could be any number of reasons for why nothing is growing on this patch of dirt. Simply because an area of land cannot grow wildlife doesn't automatically mean the devil himself has anything to do with it. But throw in the fact that there are 2 red glowing eyes there, plus a few other creepy occurrences, and we might just have something demonic afoot. Locals have reported putting objects in the center of the circle, then coming back a little while later and having those same items moved outside the circle, as if someone or something did this deliberately. The thinking is that this circle is a place used by the devil to dance or to perform rituals that we don't understand. Having things inside his circle of death doesn't make for a great dancing spot or sacrificial zone, so those things need to get moved. That's why we see the red eyes in the night, and there's an overwhelming sensation of dread in the area. It's the devil doing his devilish things. A daring reporter actually decided to test this theory one evening and slept in the exact spot in a tent. He said that the entire evening he heard the distinct sounds of dancing footprints outside his tent, but couldn't spot anything when he looked out. My dude literally could have been like 1 foot away from the actual devil. No idea how he managed to make it through the entire night, but honestly, solid respect. Either way, this guy's story is an exception, not the norm. I'd avoid this place at all costs, because if you don't, the devil might actually make you pay for it. Number 5 on this list is Villa Paula. This haunted place is located in Miami and has quite the interesting guest in the backyard. Thrillist says this stately white mansion was originally constructed as the Cuban consulate in the mid-1920s, home to Consul Domingo Millard and his wife, Paula. The Cuban-born Paula was known to spend her days playing piano and drinking Cuban coffee until she died from complications from a leg amputation in 1932. Legend has it that Domingo interred his late wife in a sarcophagus laid in the backyard. The sarcophagus is still there now, covered by ficus tree roots and nearly impossible to reach. Whether or not it actually contains her mortal remains is debatable at best, but reports of her ghost persist. It's said her ghost is in different rooms there, says History Miami's Dr. Paul George. People who've lived at Villa Paula since have had existential kinds of experiences. Among them, phantom coffee smells and piano playing, a one-legged woman roaming about as well. So there is a literal sarcophagus just chilling in this person's backyard. Can you imagine having that just show up on the house listing? I'd be like, no, we are not okay with that. I'm kind of surprised that no one has gone to go deal with the sarcophagus before. I mean, you can't just leave this thing down there like that and expect the ghost to just go away. I would imagine that Paula's spirit is probably tied to the sarcophagus, and in turn, it's tied to the area. Granted, I do kind of understand why no one wants to dig it up. Think about all the crazy stuff that's happened with the pyramids. You dig up this sarcophagus and you might end up being cursed for life, which is obviously something that nobody wants. But now we're left in this awkward place where we can't get rid of the ghost, but at the same time can't live here either. That's why I'm recommending to all of you watching, just avoid Villa Paula altogether. Number 4 on this list is the Blue Anchor Pub. So this is an interesting one because this pub didn't actually start in Florida. Thrillist says this pub was built in 1840s London during Jack the Ripper times, so it should be no surprise that it's haunted. The story goes that the bar was raised in London, but its wooden interiors were sent to New York City and then onto this sleepy Florida town in 1996. Little did anyone know that the pub's original elements came with the ghost of Bertha Starkley, a cheating wife who was murdered by her husband. Today, she can be heard rattling pots, knocking things over, and wailing in the middle of the night at the Blue Anchor. Every night around 10 p.m., the time that she was murdered, Bertha likes to remind everyone she's still here, so the current owners ring the ship's bell to scare her away. So, first thing, I've never actually heard of that before, where they take a building from one continent and then just decide to move it over to another continent. This bar must look pretty cool on the inside to go to all that trouble though. Obviously, this was a bit of a mistake and everyone would have been better served if we relocated this thing straight to the dump. Bertha doesn't care if it's in London or America or anywhere. As long as the structure of this pub is still intact, her ghost will still be floating around, which makes it very hard to enjoy a night out at this place. Like, imagine drowning several pints, going to take a piss, and then getting ambushed by some 1800s ghost in the bathroom with your pee-pee hanging out. Like, I don't know if I'd ever be able to recover from that, folks. Number 3 on this list is St. Augustine's Lighthouse. Ah yes, the haunted lighthouse, a true classic. Thrillist says St. Augustine's iconic lighthouse is a Florida landmark built in 1874. But climb up its 219 steps, and it's not just the views that will take your breath away. First, there's the ghost of Joseph Andrew, the original lighthouse keeper who fell to his death while painting the 165-foot tower. Then there are the Pity's 2 daughters who were playing with a building cart when it broke loose and slid into the nearby bay, drowning them both. While the girls giggle and run up and down the lighthouse steps, Joseph has been reported smoking cigars at the top of the lighthouse, keeping watch over his forever home. You know guys, if I had to be a ghost, then being Joseph wouldn't be the worst. I get to look out at the pretty scenery at the top of my lighthouse where hardly anyone bothers me, and I get to smoke cigars all day. Like, obviously I wouldn't want to be a ghost, but if I had to be, then this wouldn't be that bad. Either way, I'm not a ghost now. I am very much a human being, and if I want to stay a human being, then I recommend avoiding this place. It can obviously be very jarring to see 2 little ghost girls running around, and even though all of these ghosts are supposed to be pretty chill, we know that the paranormal can be unpredictable. I'm sure that there are tons of other non-haunted Florida lighthouses around if you're really pining for a good view. Number 2 on this list is Fort East Martello. If you don't like dolls, then you really won't like this one, guys. Thrillist says if there is one rule all Floridians follow, it's do not mess with Robert the doll. The 4-foot figurine has terrorized anyone who hasn't taken him seriously since he was gifted to artist Robert Jean Otto in 1904. Otto blamed any mischievous act around him on Robert the doll, effectively coining the oft-repeated Robert did it mantra. The doll currently holds court inside Fort East Martello, where he lives inside a glass case surrounded by a constant soundtrack of haunting xylophone music. The room evokes a heavy air immediately upon entering, and the walls are papered with apology notes from cocky tourists who've dared cross the world's most haunted plaything. Even the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, felt Robert's wrath when he suffered a series of health mishaps shortly after dissing the doll on his reality show. I don't like dolls, folks, especially the haunted variety, so this entry obviously had to make the list. Clearly it curses you after you see it because people literally have to come back here and ask for its forgiveness. I don't know if the notes work or not, but I guess that's all you can do when you're dealing with a haunted doll. doll. Hopefully this doll can just chill out and stop haunting people, but in the meantime, I just flat out avoid going to this place in Florida altogether. And number 1 on this list is Casa Monica Resort and Spa. It really sucks that this place is so haunted because it's truly beautiful. Thrillist says St. Augustine's fanciest hotel is also its most haunted. In fact, this 5-star Mediterranean revival haunt is a hotbed of spectral activity. Children are heard running along the 4th floor, but no one is there. The radio in the Ponce de Leon suite randomly comes on, but no one's there. Guests of room 411 wake up to people staring at them, but no one's there. But it's the 3-story Flagler suite high in the tower that's most haunted. Maids have seen a child's handprint appear on the 1st floor bathroom mirror, and after knocking, one heard a man say, "We've been expecting you," from an empty bedroom. Its spookiest claim to fame, however, is the male ghost staring out of the top tower window. He's believed to be the ghost of one of 2 people, either Franklin Smith, the architect who built the hotel, or Henry Flagler, the man who purchased it. I personally don't care if it's the architect, the man who purchased it, or God. Anyone who says, "I've been waiting for you as I enter an empty bedroom," it's not the type of individual I want to be around. Also, where are these children coming from and what are those sounds? Okay, so you want to tell me a scary story where the architect of the building fell in love with his work and then when he died, his ghost stayed here. Alright, fine, I can buy that, I can believe that, but like, what are the children doing here? What do they have to do with this place and the architect? Maybe this is just one of those spots where it doesn't matter what happened here, it doesn't matter what will happen here in the future, it's just always destined to be haunted.
In at number 5 we have Eldridge Hotel. The Eldridge Hotel is a historic building located in downtown Lawrence, Kansas. The building is named after Sheila Eldridge, who was a prominent anti-slavery individual who lived here in the 1800s. The building became an apartment complex in the 1970s, but there was a strong desire by the city to see it open as a hotel, and a group of investors contributed, as well as the city of Lawrence, into industrial revenue bonds to make this dream a reality. In the later 1980s it opened as a hotel. A popular story has circulated about the hauntings in this hotel, with the locals, employees and guests, that the ghost is that of Sheila Eldridge, who haunts the halls to this day. Many claim that because the Eldridge House's original cornerstone is located in room 506 and his spirit will manifest in that room and also roam around the building. People who have stayed in this room have claimed to witness breath marks on recently cleaned mirrors, doors opening and shutting on their own, and lights turning on and off by themselves. Others claim that the hotel's elevator is also haunted by a different spirit who is known to open and shut the elevator doors on the 5th floor. The 5th floor is said to contain a portal to the spirit world. A popular photograph was taken during the 1980s that clearly shows a ghost-like figure in the building's elevator. Many other photographers have mentioned having unexplained technical difficulties with their cameras when near the elevator. The story of the hotel and the hauntings of Eldridge was the inspiration for the movie The Demon's Shadow, and the hotel was featured in the series My Ghost Story and has been depicted in many writings. Many believe the rich history has resulted in the amount of paranormal activity. In at number 4, Midland Railroad Hotel. The Midland Railroad Hotel is known for serving the largest steak around, and if you can finish all of it, you get it for free. But it has a sinister, haunting history. It was first a popular train stop in the 1890s, then known for being the location for the movie Paper Moon, where many scenes were filmed at this hotel in 1973. Since then, it's gone through fires, the Great Depression, and plenty of renovations. It is now owned by the Wilson Foundation, has been back in business since 2003, and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Not only is this hotel known for these interesting things, it's most known now for the paranormal activity that lurks around the hotel. The most famous ghost is that of an orphan girl that haunts the 3rd floor, who knocks on doors, runs through the hallways, and even jumps on your bed, leaving little footprints. A ghost hunting team has experienced this spirit and have recorded sounds of the little girl. Another 3rd floor room is where a sheriff was said to have been lynched, and sometimes the door is unable to be unlocked even by the master key. Ghostly figures have been been seen at the top of the stairs, and things in the kitchen have flown distances suddenly without being touched by anyone. There are also many ghostly figures that are seen on the staircases, and have left many to believe that the fire that took many lives back in 1902 are the results of some of these paranormal presences. The owner of the Midland Railroad Hotel, Melinda Merrill, says that there's not one employee who hasn't seen or felt something, and you can definitely feel a presence when you enter the hotel. In at number 3 we have Hotel Josephine. The Hotel Josephine is considered by many to be the most haunted hotel in Kansas. It was built in 1890, located in the city of Holton, and is the oldest consecutive operating hotel west of the Mississippi River. The history of the hotel is rich but also very haunted. The hotel was built by A.D. Walker and was named after his daughter Josephine. When it was built, she was only 4 months old, and she attended the local elementary school and graduated Kansas University. Her graduation photo is hung in the front parlor, above the antique piano, and according to the current hotel manager, Tracer Fox, her spirit is just one that is wandering the hotel. Tracer Fox has expressed his belief in the spirits when he first stayed at the hotel. He was woken up suddenly at 3:30 a.m. and his bed was moving. He figured there was an earthquake, but when nothing in the news confirmed it, he knew it was a spirit. His mother came and stayed in a room across from him and experienced the exact same thing he did with no explanation for it. They had been skeptics before these happenings, but they are both now firm believers. Other guests staying at the hotel have similar stories, as well as experiencing hearing strange sounds, laughter, footsteps, and seeing shadows. It has been expressed that spirits can be found on each floor. One of the most haunted rooms in the hotel is the Buffalo Room, where shadows are often seen and photographed in the mirrors around the room, as well as the Carrie Nation Room. According to historical documents, a woman hanged herself in the bathroom of that room, and many guests staying there have come out of the room clutching their necks and having a hard time breathing. The hotel has brought several famous guests over the years, including former US President Grover Cleveland, who stayed there in between his 2 terms as president, along with Carrie Nation, Robert Louis Stevenson, Charles Curtis, Kirstie Alley, John Sullivan, Sam Rayburn, and Harry Langdon. Due to the amount of paranormal activity and active spirits in this hotel, the hotel hosts several paranormal and haunted events throughout the year, and many ghost hunters come to Holton to check out the more than century-old hotel. It's also been featured in many television shows, including Ghost Tours of Kansas and Haunted Rooms America. Coming in at number 2 we have McInteer Villa. The McInteer Villa is one of the unusual and historic houses built in the city of Atchison. It was built in 1889 for John McInteer, a wealthy manufacturer of harnesses and saddles. He did a great deal of business with wagon trains plying the overland trails. John McInteer's first wife, Alice, died in 1892. He married his second wife, Anna Conlon, a widow with 3 sons, and after John's death in 1902, Anna continued living in the home until her death in 1916. During her ownership, the house was home to many of her relatives, with lots of children as well. Around 1925, Anna's brother, Judge Charles J. Conlon, a prominent Atchison lawyer, and his family made the villa their home. In 1952, the McInteer Villa was purchased by Miss Isabel Altus, a retired professional violinist and eccentric. She lacked the financial resources to be able to restore the home, and shortly before her death, she sold the home to George Gerardi in 1969, who started to rehabilitate the old estate. Many people, past and present, who have lived in and visited the home have experienced many paranormal experiences. There have been figures being seen in windows when no one is home, lights turning on and off in the tower which doesn't have electricity, a speaker getting thrown off the counter, and boxes mysteriously moving on their own. Sounds of slamming doors throughout the night, footsteps walking down the hallway on the second floor throughout the night, the feeling of being watched, drastic temperature changes, voices, the scent of a woman's perfume, and the hunt of cigarettes. The number of encounters and confirmed hauntings seen and heard around this home is crazy, and it's considered to be one of the most active paranormal homes in all of the US. The amount of activity in this home makes it a hub for investigators, mediums, psychics, and ghost hunters. They offer ghost tours of the home, and you can stay overnight to try and encounter these spirits. And finally, in at number 1 we have Sally House. The Sally House is said to be the most haunted place in Kansas. This home was built in the turn of the century and is located in the city of Atchison. After being built, the home was bought by the Atchison physician who worked from his home. The front served as an office space and examination rooms, and the upstairs is where the doctor and his family lived. One day, a frantic mother arrived at the home carrying her young daughter Sally. The child had collapsed from severe abdominal pain. The doctor diagnosed appendicitis, but there was no time to delay surgery. surgery. Sally unfortunately passed away on the operating table. For years after, many believe Sally stayed to haunt the home, and the haunting grew infamous in 1993 when the house was rented to a young couple. It started when the couple's dog would growl at nothing and make even louder growls when near the upstairs nursery. Things began to take a violent turn when fires broke out in the house and a series of sinister attacks on the husband began. The former operating area would feel extremely cold and objects would visibly move when the young man came close. He could feel scratches on his chest and abdomen, but the ghost never attacked the wife or baby. Not only did the former residents experience the paranormal activity, but locals and other visitors of the home have experienced objects moving on their own, mysterious coldness, physical touches, video and investigative equipment that stopped working, trained guide dogs refusing to enter the nursery, and unexplained scratches or bruising on their bodies during and after their visits. Psychics have visited the home, and many have confirmed the presence of spirits in the home and have even communicated with them, and many have entered as skeptics and left believers. Due to the number of experiences in the home, it's gained a lot of media coverage from television channels including A&E, the Travel Channel, the Discovery Channel, and the Sci-Fi Channel. The home is not currently occupied but holds many guided ghost tours for both daytime and even overnight visits for the ghost lovers and paranormal investigators. Beware though, because a waiver is required due to the potential for personal injury, but no serious injuries have been reported since the last tenant in 1993.
Coming in at our number 5 spot, the Alamo. The Alamo Mission is located in San Antonio. This is where a group of Americans took a historic stand in 1836 against a much larger Mexican force. This was during the War for Texan independence from Mexico. Thousands of men ended up being killed and their bodies were dumped into mass graves. And this resulted in many angered spirits that decided to stick around this building. Many security guards have reported hearing footsteps in the middle of the night, yet seeing no one. But people have witnessed a little blonde-haired boy in the gift shop on several occasions. He never speaks and then will just all of a sudden disappear. In at number 4, Screaming Bridge. This bridge is located at River Legacy Park in Arlington, Texas. Legend says that one night a car full of teenagers was driving too fast when they came up to the bridge. They ended up hitting an oncoming car, and both cars caught on fire before crashing into the river. All involved in the collision died. The bridge has been closed to all traffic ever since the accident in 1994. This bridge is now accessible by walking through the park. Sometimes teens will go there at night to try and scare each other, and paranormal investigators will go there for research. Some people have even reported seeing the names and dates of those who died glowing in the river. Some claim they've seen the teens' ghosts in the area, or that they've even seen headlights on the bridge and heard a car's engine. Yeah, definitely wouldn't be going to that bridge anytime soon. At number 3, Six Flags over Texas. If you've ever been to Six Flags in Texas, then you've heard of Annie. Annie is the spirit of a little girl who died near Johnson's Creek in the early 1900s. Her spirit now lives in the Texas section of the park. Employees have said her spirit is very mischievous, as she will turn the lights on and off in her room, which is located in the yellow house near the entrance to the Texas Giant. Others have claimed to see her and feel her in Runaway Mountain. There's literally a forum online where former and current Six Flags employees write down their experiences with her. Coming in at number 2, Lost Cemetery of Infants. Yeah, back in 1894, the world was a pretty messed up place, where single mothers were shunned from the general public. A reverend named James Tony Upchurch created an industrial home for the redemption of these women. They were taught employable skills that could help them rejoin society. The institute eventually turned into a self-sustaining village that, by 1935, turned into an orphanage. The only thing that remains of this land today is the hidden graveyard. It's referred to as the Lost Cemetery of Infants. It marks the graves of stillbirths and complicated births where the baby didn't make it. Over the years, people have reported seeing shadowy figures darting between the trees, hearing children's voices, and feel like they are being watched, as well as small toys appearing and then disappearing on the grave. And in at number 1, Granbury. Granbury is cited as one of the most haunted cities in Texas as a whole. Yeah, apparently this is just a really spirit and ghost populated place. Some of the town's more spooky destinations include the Granbury Opera House, Hex Hotel, yeah, probably not the best marketing choice there, and Last Mile Cemetery. Yeah, well, they aren't being subtle with that one.
Number 5 on this list is Larnach Castle. New Zealand isn't like a lot of European countries with tons of castles. In fact, as far as castles go, they hardly have that many at all. That's why it kinda sucks that one of their only ones and one of the most beautiful just has to be haunted. Travel Triangle writes, one of the spookiest places in New Zealand, the Larnach Castle, is famous for being one of the few castles in the country. The story goes as follows. The castle's ballroom was gifted by Larnach to his daughter Katie on her 21st birthday. Unfortunately, she died young due to typhoid cancer. His first 2 wives also died while in this castle, and he himself took his own life after learning of his son's and his 3rd wife's affair. Later, the castle was also a mental hospital during the World Wars. While Katie is seen swirling in the ballroom, he too has been spotted roaming around the corridors. Instances of people being pushed, touched on the back, and others have all been reported. Well, that is just all kinds of messed up, guys. Why couldn't this have been the last season of Game of Thrones instead of what we did get? We got disease, affairs, multiple wives, people taking their own life, and then on top of all of that, this castle was literally used as a mental hospital during the World Wars. I truly cannot think of a history that would have made a place more haunted than that. Apparently, the ghost of the father who killed himself is often spotted at this location. He'll appear to visitors and will moan and cry to them, seemingly regretting his decision. Some people have also spotted a ghoul-like creature that looks a little bit like the Joker. It's in a straitjacket and has this menacing smile that looks sinister but also gives you the feeling that this creature isn't in control of its actions. It's really too bad that this is the reality of Larnach Castle, because I looked at some photos and from the outside, it's pretty cool. Even though it looks really nice, I can't in good conscience recommend that you go here though. Number 4 on this list is the Pini Homestead. This homestead is located in the Howick Historical Village, which was built in 1861, but then moved to where it sits now in 1982. NewsHub writes, over the years there have been sightings of a woman in white ascending the stairs. Footsteps have been heard from the halls with no one around to make them, and the sound of objects being dragged across the floor has reportedly echoed through the empty walls. Whalbank stayed overnight in the homestead to try and see whatever was going on in the night for himself. He says there was a feeling of being watched, but it didn't make him feel afraid. As the night alone in the old building progressed, there were sounds he couldn't explain. Scuffing sounds and swishes. It's like there's something just around that corner, he wrote in a journal at the time. Hiding or doing something. I'm thinking of a rat, but I can't see one. At around 3 a.m., Whalbank heard a bang as though something had fallen over. Turns out the torch he had set up on a chair upstairs had fallen or been knocked over. Footage shows the torch flying down the stairs as though it had been thrown. But there's no camera on the torch itself, so just how it moved like that is still a mystery. Video footage of the stairs doesn't show much, just a slight shadow maybe. But it's the audio that's odd. Loud noises that sound like a cabinet being dragged across the floor. A series of footsteps and several loud clanking noises similar to that made by a metal bucket. Whenever ghosts or paranormal beings have the ability to move physical objects, the stakes, they get raised a lot. Think about it, if that torch just so happened to land on something flammable and Whalbank wasn't there to hear it right away, then that entire house could have gone up with him in it. Ghosts like this are dangerous and have no care for human life. Why this ghost is here or why they're pissed off at humans is a mystery as well. Maybe if we knew that, then we could at least do something to appease it, but we can't. Once again, this is the case of a spot in New Zealand that for whatever reason is just deeply haunted. Number 3 on this list is the Napier Prison. Napier Prison is the oldest jail in the country, dating all the way back to 1862. The prison shut down its activities in 1993, but that was after 130 years of reluctant guests staying here and doing enough damage to cause it to become seriously haunted. Like most jails back then, there were some serious injustices that took place here. The prisoners were treated brutally. They could be tortured, beaten, or in some cases even killed. There's an area of the prison called the Hanging Yard, and I think you can probably imagine what happened there based on the name. This prison also housed some of the hardest criminals in New Zealand. Granted, it also housed some people who did some petty crimes too, and some who were even just generally innocent. The dark history and the numerous human rights violations that went down here have left their mark for sure. The first thing that goes is technology. Those who go here say that cell phones stop working, cameras have a hard time capturing images, and if they brought a computer, then that's as good as useless. Then you get hit with the shadows. What is a brightly lit room all of a sudden just gets filled with darkness from literally nowhere. How it got there is anyone's guess. And last is the faces. Disembodied faces show up in this dark haze and either speak to visitors or attack them. Sometimes they'll come straight out of the walls, and sometimes they'll just appear in front of you. As cool as it would be to talk to a floating head, I don't think I want to risk the mental trauma that I'd have after seeing that, so I recommend avoiding this jail altogether. Number 2 on this list is Waitomo Caves Hotel. Every country's got one. One hotel that has, through its time of being active, seen one too many tragedies to just be a normal hotel. Some hotels have it worse than others though, and this one is definitely top tier when it comes to hauntings. NewsHub says, originally called Waitomo House, the hotel is said to teem with ghostly activity. Bathtubs drip with blood, spirits walk straight through guests, and those brave enough to stay the night could feel something jump on them or pull their bedsheets away. Wallbank told NewsHub the stories of the hotels were intense. We heard stories from the people there even if management didn't admit it, he said. A staff member said that she went into one of the rooms to clean it, and the bathtub was just filled with what she said looked like blood. She ran out to get another person to look, but when they came back, it was completely clear, he said. People just don't make things like that up. Wallbank and his Haunted Auckland team, accompanied by the Wellington Strange Occurrences Society, were brave enough to stay the night. They say a slew of uncomfortable experiences follow them. Sinking feelings, like when you go over a bump in the road, were felt. A ball of light passed straight through one of the investigators, and multiple people felt as though they were being watched. Unexplained whispers were captured using voice recording technology, and one of the investigators claimed to have seen a dark shadow streak across a hallway. So this is just a big fat no from me, guys. If I'm going to a hotel, then I want to be calm. I want to be relaxed. I want to get to my room and see a nice little chocolate chilling on my pillow with the bed made. I want to order room service and then have one too many mimosas at brunch. What I don't want is to be fearing for my freaking life from some shadow demon. I also like to take the occasional warm bath, and doing so in a pool of blood is not my idea of a relaxing time. I tried to find out why this hotel is this way, like what could have possibly happened to it to cause such a horrible haunting, but there actually wasn't anything. From my research, it doesn't look like anything tragic of major significance occurred here. This place is just generally haunted and just should be avoided at all costs. Number 1 on this list is Camp Adair. Camp Adair was first established in 1913 and has over 100 acres of land attached to it. It's your typical camp environment and provides a bunch of outdoor and environmental activities for those who want to come and be a part of it. It's a popular location for school trips and overnight stays. Sadly, it was during one of these school trips that a horrible tragedy occurred. There was a group of children who stayed at this camp many years ago. While they were there, something came over their teacher. A soft and a very kind man, by all accounts, totally lost his mind. During the night, whilst everyone was asleep, this teacher woke up. Instead of go to the bathroom or get some water like most of us do in the night, he instead decided to kill every single one of the students that were with him, before ultimately taking his own life as well. Nobody knows why he did this, what changed in his demeanor to have him commit such an atrocity, but they do know that his ghost has never left. Still as mad as the last day that he was alive, this ghost wanders the grounds now and is in search of another victim. The one super noticeable feature about him is his bright red beard. Whenever students come to this camp, they are immediately told that if they ever see someone with a red beard, just run in the other direction. Number 5 on this list is the Hay Adams Hotel. This hotel is located in Washington, D.C. and has quite the history to it. USA Today writes, quite possibly the most famous hotel in the capital, the Hay Adams has hosted many a politician, including the Obamas before inauguration. In 1884, best friends John Hay, Abraham Lincoln's private secretary and later a Secretary of State, and Henry Adams, the author and descendant of John Quincy, built their homes on the plot of land where the hotel now sits. In 1927, 9 years after Adams' death, the houses were razed and replaced by the hotel that stands today. Adams' wife, Marion Hooper Adams, killed herself on the site in 1885, and her spirit reportedly haunts the hotel. Guests and staff say they can hear a woman crying softly, disembodied voices, and doors opening and closing on their own. What is it about hotels and people taking their own lives? It feels like so many hotels are haunted because someone left the world far too early, and usually it was their decision to do so. Marion Hooper Adams is no exception, and she has made this hotel a very inhospitable place to stay. Sometimes you hear the faint cries of a creature or spirit and they go away, but apparently her spirit absolutely wails. All the time there are screams and crying heard. In fact, it's so repetitive that it gets less scary and more of an annoyance than anything else. People literally just can't sleep at night because they're constantly listening to her crying over how her life ended. It's also a nuisance when they find things missing all the time. Marion likes to move things and steal items. Oftentimes, the valuables of these people are gone if they leave the hotel for an extended period of time and then come back. Now, maybe this part of the legend is actually just one of the hotel workers stealing stuff and blaming it on her, but either way, things will go missing if you stay here. It's overall just a horrible experience being at this hotel for an extended period of time, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Number 4 on this list is Hotel Provincial. Located in New Orleans, this hotel is teeming with paranormal energy. USA Today says the 2-story Hotel Provincial with 94 rooms in the historic French Quarter is a retreat into old New Orleans. Like many New Orleans properties, it also claims to be a popular paranormal activity hub. Like other area hotels, the property acted as a medical facility for wounded Confederate soldiers and is said to still possess their spirits. From distressed soldiers and operating doctors to pools of blood, guests have reported it all. If actually staying at the property seems too spooky, it's also a stop on many walking ghost tours of the city as well. Pools of blood, guys. Literal pools of blood. Just imagine walking into your hotel room after a long day of doing stuff, getting into your PJs, moving the comforter over to your bed to slip in, and then seeing a bunch of blood just ooze out. This has actually happened to people before. That would absolutely scar me for life if something like that ever went down. Not to mention people actually getting physically scarred when they come here. People have reported getting attacked by unknown paranormal entities while staying here, waking up to a spirit completely ravaging them and having no idea how or why it's happening. This is not the type of hotel that you want to stay at, and you will literally risk your safety if you do. Number 3 on this list is the Pfister Hotel. This one has been around for a while and has got a lot of people scared who've stayed here. Travel and Leisure says the historic Pfister Hotel opened in Milwaukee in 1893 with elegant interiors and advanced technology for the times, including electricity, individual thermostat controls, and fireproofing, making it one of the most sought-after accommodations in the city. The hotel is supposedly home to a number of spooky sightings. In fact, several MLB players have reported their own personal ghost experiences in the hotel, and some are even too scared to stay there again. So guys, I actually run a podcast all about the MLB. Because I run this podcast, I'm pretty knowledgeable about the MLB. I have literally heard of this hotel before even doing research on this video. Players will flat out refuse to play here now because they get way too scared and can't get any sleep when they're there. Then obviously when they play their game the next day, they suck because they just spent the entire night basically fending for their lives in this haunted hotel. It's really too bad that it has to be this way because this is apparently one of the nicer hotels in Milwaukee. It's definitely one of the oldest, and back then it was the best place to stay if you wanted a luxurious night. Hopefully the ghosts that reside here eventually leave and we can all enjoy it once again without getting completely haunted. Number 2 on this list is the Emily Morgan Hotel. The Emily Morgan Hotel is located in Texas and is probably the most haunted in that entire state. It wasn't always the lovely and renovated hotel that it is today. Prior to this being a beautiful place to stay, this was actually a hospital and a place for doctors to stay. Obviously, during that period, it saw a lot of illness and death, and that has tainted the space. But believe it or not though, this isn't the only set of tragedies that this location has seen. Before it was a hospital, before it was anything at all, on this very site where the hotel currently sits, was the Battle of the Alamo. The Battle of the Alamo was one of the most critical battles in the Texas Revolution. The battle lasted for 13 brutal days in 1836. It was between the Mexican soldiers and the Texan soldiers. The Mexican soldiers won out and killed every single one of the Texan soldiers who were there defending their fort. This battle is one of the most famous in American history for how horrible and brutal it was. It's no wonder that the land here is haunted and will infect basically anything that's built here. It also doesn't help when the hotel used to be a hospital which saw its fair share of horrible things too. Nowadays, this hotel has a whole cast of paranormal characters. Soldiers from back in the day have been spotted roaming around the halls, and patients and doctors as well. There have even been a few occasions where people have reported having visions of being on the battlefield as if they were transported there. Definitely not the spot to be staying on your vacay to Texas. And finally, number 1 on this list is La Fonda on the Plaza. This is a hotel located in New Mexico that has been host to plenty of tragedies. Travel and Leisure says this beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico hotel has an incredibly rich history. Since 1609, a number of inns have been located on this very site, but a handful of events may be the cause of continued hauntings. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the ghosts of a judge shot in the lobby, a businessman who gambled everything away at the hotel before jumping down a well, and a bride killed on her wedding night are just a few of the spirits that you may come across during your stay here. That's 3 spirits too many for me, guys. Whenever situations like this arise, I start to question things. What I mean is that, isn't this a little bit odd that 3 totally separate, completely different tragic events all took place right here at different times? Sure, it could be a coincidence, but it seems like a rather sad one if you ask me. Maybe there was always something about this space that was just a little off. Maybe people who come here just get hit with horrible luck. Maybe this hotel was built on some sort of ancient ground that it shouldn't have been built on, and this is the horrible reaction. I obviously can't say for sure, but something's fishy about this hotel, and I wouldn't recommend checking it out if I was you.
At number 5, the Ohio State Reformatory. The Ohio State Reformatory, a haunting architectural marvel that carries within its walls the echoes of a troubled past. Constructed in the late 19th century, this imposing Victorian Gothic structure was initially intended to embody progressive correctional ideals. However, over time, it became synonymous with stories of despair, shuddering, and unexplained phenomena, solidifying its reputation as one of the most haunted places in the United States. The Reformatory's history is rife with tales of harsh conditions, overcrowding, and the struggles of those who were incarcerated within its confines. These factors, coupled with the tragic stories of inmates who lived and died there, have contributed to the pervasive sense of unease that envelops the site. Visitors often report strange occurrences, such as unexplained footsteps echoing through the empty halls, eerie whispers that seem to float on the air, and chilling cold spots that hint at otherworldly presences. In some cases, there have even been disappearances and killings, alluding to the dark spectral forces that inhabit the reformatory. One of the most famous aspects of the Ohio State Reformatory is its appearance in the movie The Shawshank Redemption. While the film highlighted the reformatory's grim atmosphere, its true history is far richer and more complex. The architecture itself tells a tale of a bygone era, with its intricate detailing and imposing structure standing as a stark contrast to the stories of suffering that unfolded within its walls. Guided tours and events at the reformatory allow visitors to explore its various sections, from the imposing cell blocks to the eerie solitary confinement area, known as the Hole, creating an immersive experience that evokes a sense of timelessness. The stark contrast between the ornate exterior and the haunting interior serves as a poignant reminder of the complex and often troubling history that defines the reformatory. While some may dismiss claims of paranormal activity as mere superstition, the stories and experiences recounted by those who have visited the Ohio State Reformatory are difficult to ignore. The combination of a somber history, decaying architecture, and the mysterious ambience that permeates the air makes for an unforgettable experience that lingers long after the visit is over. Number 4. Molly Stark Sanatorium. The former Molly Stark Hospital, located in Molly Stark Park in Ohio, is a haunting relic of a bygone era. Once a treatment center for tuberculosis patients, the decaying building exudes a ghoulish aura, with vines snaking over ancient brick, shattered windows, and faded stone. Closed for over 2 decades, the hospital's dilapidated state has attracted ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts, leading to the erection of a barbed wire fence to deter trespassers. Owned by the Stark County Park District, the property offers public tours to its exterior, revealing intricate architectural details and a fascinating history. The hospital, originally constructed in 1929 at a cost of around $1 million, treated tuberculosis patients until the 1970s, and later served as a mental health facility and a rehabilitation center for those suffering with addiction. The tour provides insights into the hospital's architectural flourishes, including a portico and stone-carved religious symbols, reflective of the faith that played a role in caring for those afflicted by tuberculosis. The hospital's conditions quickly began to decline in the mid-1970s, after reports of ghost sightings within the hospital. Patients and staff alike bore witness to the likes of victims of tuberculosis, despite the fact that treatment for the illness was invented 20 years prior. These now-deceased patients were known to disrupt disrupt medical examinations, cause mass hysteria among patients and staff, and even cause many disappearances within the hospital. The amount of distress these apparitions caused eventually led to the hospital's closure in 1995. Nowadays, the site's haunted reputation draws curiosity seekers, but the tour focused mostly on the building's history rather than the many ghosts that still scuffle about the old hospital. And number 3, South Base Island Lighthouse. Perched atop the rugged cliffs of South Base Island in Put-in Bay, the historic lighthouse stands as both a beacon of maritime history and a portal to a realm of ghostly legends. The South Base Island Lighthouse, with its iconic red brick tower and majestic views of Lake Erie, cast a haunting silhouette against the ever-changing skies, drawing visitors from far and wide who seek to unravel the mysteries that have enshrouded this hallowed site for decades. Built in 1897, the South Base Island Lighthouse served as a vital navigational aid for ships traversing the treacherous waters of Lake Erie. Its light guided sailors through storms and fog, ensuring safe passage to the shores. However, as time marched on and technology advanced, the lighthouse's significance diminished, eventually leading to its decommissioning in the mid-20th century. But as darkness descends upon the island, the lighthouse takes on an air of malevolence. The wind howls like the mournful wails of lost souls, while the crashing waves below create a symphony of despair. Those brave enough to step inside confront an unsettling stillness, punctuated only by the occasional creak of floorboards under an invisible, unrelenting force. Phantom shadows dance along the walls. There are ethereal forms casting an ominous dance that defies explanation. Visitors recount harrowing tales of icy fingers brushing against their skin, of ghostly whispers that worm their way into their minds, and of an overpowering sense of dread that lingers long after they've fled the premises. The lighthouse had to be shut down after several reports of it turning off at random times, or guiding sailors towards dangerous areas, despite being completely unmanned. One can only assume that this mischief was the work of the spirits that haunt the lighthouse. This forsaken lighthouse has earned its place among the most terrifying locales in Ohio, a reputation upheld by relentless tales of ghostly apparitions, unexplainable phenomena, and an atmosphere so saturated with maleficent energy that it leaves visitors trembling in its wake. Whether driven by morbid curiosity or a thirst for the macabre, those who dare to cross the threshold into the South Base Island Lighthouse do so at their own peril. For here, in the heart of the lighthouse's labyrinthine corridors, the boundary between the living and the spectral blurs, and the chilling embrace of the unknown reaches out to ensnare those who dare to seek it. And at number 2, Moonville Tunnel. Deep within the remote woods of southeastern Ohio lies a sinister enigma shrouded in darkness, the Moonville Tunnel. This desolate and haunted passage, long abandoned by the living, stands as a portal to a realm where reality intertwines with the supernatural, and where the unwary may find themselves vanishing into the void if they dare to tread too close. The Moonville Tunnel, a vestige of an era past, was once a vital conduit for a long-forgotten railway. Yet, as time eroded the tracks and decay seeped into its very stones, a chilling transformation occurred. Stories of ghastly apparitions and eerie encounters have swirled around the tunnel, like the mist that clings to its mouth. Tales whispered among locals with a mixture of dread and fascination. Daredevil adventurers who have ventured into the tunnel speak of an oppressive, tangible malevolence that envelops the air, an unrelenting presence that seems to watch, to wait, and to hunger for the unsuspecting. Perhaps the most sinister tale is that of the Moonville Tunnel's insatiable appetite for souls. It is said that if you step foot into the tunnel around 3 a.m., when the boundaries between worlds are at their thinnest, you may never step back out. Foolhardy wanderers who venture into its depths during the witching hour risk becoming mere specters themselves, forever trapped in a twilight realm of torment and despair. The tunnel's history is steeped in tragedy, adding to its ominous aura. Legends tell of a brakeman who met a grisly end beneath the wheels of an oncoming train, his anguished spirit now condemned to roam the dark expanse. Others speak of mournful phantom cries that pierce the silence, echoing the heart-wrenching despair of a long-lost soul. Visitors who dare to challenge the Moonville Tunnel's eerie reputation tread a perilous path, as the moonlight filters through the dense canopy, casting ghostly shadows upon the tunnel's yawning maw. A feeling of being watched intensifies. Footsteps echo with an eerie resonance, their sound swallowed by the blackness ahead. Time itself seems to warp, stretching and distorting reality as though beckoning the unwary to step beyond the veil. To approach the Moonville Tunnel is to court danger, to teeter on the precipice of the unknown. It is a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurs, where the rules of our reality are subverted by forces beyond comprehension. As the wind whispers secrets and the very earth seems to hold its breath, those who venture too close may find themselves joining the ranks of the vanished, a chilling testament to the dark and untamed forces that linger within the haunted confines of Moonville Tunnel. Coming in at number 1, Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle, an imposing Victorian mansion nestled in the heart of Cleveland, Ohio, stands as an enigmatic edifice brimming with dark secrets and eerie tales that have earned it a reputation as one of the most haunted houses in America. With its intricate architecture, turrets, and ornate details, the castle's exterior belies the chilling stories that have swirled around it for generations. Built in the late 19th century by German immigrant and banker Hans Tiedemann, the Franklin Castle was intended to be a symbol of prosperity and opulence. However, as time passed, the mansion's grandeur began to fade, replaced by rumors of tragedy, scandal, and paranormal activity that would come to define its legacy. The Tiedemann family was plagued by a series of untimely deaths, including the passing of several youngsters and Tiedemann's wife. The pervasive aura of grief seemed to seep into the very walls of the castle, fostering an atmosphere of melancholy and despair. It is said that the spirits of the deceased still linger within its chambers, their presence felt by those who dare to venture inside. Over the years, reports of ghostly apparitions, disembodied voices, and unexplained phenomena have only added to the castle's haunted mystique. Visitors and paranormal enthusiasts alike have recounted chilling experiences, from encountering spectral figures that vanish into thin air, to hearing whispers that seem to drift from empty rooms. Cold spots and sudden drops in temperature are often attributed to the presence of otherworldly entities, and of course the few unlucky folks who, seemingly out of random, would receive the same curse as Tiedemann all those years ago. The castle's haunted reputation has been further fueled by the stories of secret passageways, hidden rooms, and a mysterious woman in black who is said to roam the halls. These elements, combined with the mansion's unsettling history, have led to countless investigations by ghost hunters and paranormal experts seeking to unlock its mysteries.
Coming in at 5, West Virginia Penitentiary. Opened all the way back in 1875, the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville is said to be one of the most haunted prisons in the states. The first building constructed on the site was the North Wagon Gate, which was made with hand-cut sandstone. The state used prison labor during the process, and work continued on this first phase up until 1876. Following completion, the prison consisted of the North Wagon Gate, north and south cell blocks, a kitchen, dining area, hospital, and chapel, as well as a 4-story tower connecting the two administration buildings. The prison also included space for female inmates and personal living quarters for the warden and his family. Once the prison opened, it housed 251 male inmates, including some who helped construct the prison where they were incarcerated. The condition of the prison worsened throughout the years, and the facility was eventually ranked as one of the top 10 most violent correctional facilities. On Wednesday, November 7, 1979, 15 prisoners escaped from the prison, one of them being Ronald Turney Williams, who was serving time for murdering Sergeant David Lilly of the Beckley Police Department. He managed to steal a guard's weapon and reach the streets where he encountered 23-year-old off-duty state trooper Philip S. Kesner, who was driving past with his wife. Kesner attempted to take action against Williams, but he was shot in the process. The prison was home to riots, fires, and nearly 100 executions during its time in operation. To this day, visitors have reported sightings of phantom inmates and a shadow man wandering the premises, as well as unexplained voices and cold spots. You can take tours around this haunted penitentiary and even view the electric chair dubbed Old Sparky. For you brave souls out there, you can also do an overnight session if you dare. Coming in at 4, North Bend Rail Trail Tunnel number 19. North Bend Rail Trail is located in Ritchie County in West Virginia and is a favorite for hikers, cyclists, and horseback riders traversing the 72-mile-long trail. However, proceed with caution if you wind up in the area, particularly around tunnel number 19, also known as the Silver Run Tunnel. History goes that on one foggy evening in 1910, an engineer spied a young woman in a flowing white dress standing on the tracks. He brought the train to a stop, but when he searched for the woman, she had vanished. He wasn't the only one to spot her either, many of his predecessors had as well. No one quite knows the origin of the woman in white, although some bones were found under a house near the tunnel. Some people say you can still spot her. Now, those who explore the tunnel are advised to bring a flashlight even during the day, with the tunnel being over 1,376 feet long, which is beyond sunlight's reach. You have been warned. Coming in at 3, Droop Mountain Battlefield. On November 6, 1863, the Battle of Droop Mountain occurred in Pocahontas County, West Virginia during the American Civil War. Confederate forces engaged but failed to prevent Union forces under General W.W. Averill from a rendezvous with other Federal troops in a joint raid on Confederate railways. Droop Mountain was one of the largest engagements in West Virginia during the war, and essentially resulted in the Confederate collapse. The battlefield site is now preserved and administered by West Virginia as a state park, and the unknown Confederate dead are buried in the Confederate Cemetery at Lewisburg. A wooden observation tower, hiking trails, and picnic tables mark the grounds where the Civil War soldiers fought, died, and some say still remain. Many visitors have reported sounds of galloping horses and sightings of the ghosts of headless Confederate soldiers, as well as one soldier lying asleep against a tree. Coming in at 2, Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. In the late 1700s, the Clay family moved to West Virginia, which is presently known as Mercer County. The Clay family, comprised of Mitchell and his wife, settled on an 800-acre farm and raised 14 children. However, in 1783, tragedy struck while Mitchell was out hunting. A few members of the Shawnee tribe killed 2 of the Clay children and burned another at the stake. In retaliation, Mitchell hunted down a handful of Native Americans and killed them. The land in turn became unoccupied for years, up until the early 1900s when Conley T. Snyder purchased the land and built a small amusement park on it. However, the amusement park had just as unfortunate luck as the Clay family. The park featured a Ferris wheel and a swing ride and was popular among locals, particularly families of coal miners who resided in the area. In the early 1950s, a young girl on the swing ride was killed when a truck delivering sodas accidentally backed into the ride, striking her. Another child also drowned in the swimming pool, which was subsequently filled in to prevent further accidents. During its operation, at least 6 people died at the park, which resulted in the park ultimately closing in 1966. In 1985, Gaylord White, a former employee of the park, purchased the land with plans to reopen it. It happened for a brief period, that is, before the park closed again after a 1988 archaeological dig uncovered numerous Native American artifacts, as well as human remains on the property that had been buried prior to the arrival of the Anglo-European settlers. In total, 13 skeletons were uncovered, mostly of young children. Perhaps the property is cursed, or perhaps it's just a series of unfortunate events. Who knows? But one thing is for sure, it is one of the most haunted places in the entire world. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, also known as the Western State Hospital, was a Kirkbride psychiatric hospital that operated from 1864 to 1994 by the government. Originally built by Richard Andrews, it was constructed from 1858 to 1881 and was originally designed to hold 250 people. However, it became overcrowded in the 1950s, with the hospital housing 2,400 patients, resulting in it being forcibly closed in 1994 due to changes in patient treatment. Following its closure, it was then purchased by Joe Jordan in 2007 and is open for tours and other events to raise money for its restorations. During tours of the facility, witnesses have reported doors slamming, shadowy figures, and even blood-curdling screams from within the building walls. The asylum has garnered such a spooky reputation it has appeared on shows such as Ghost Stories, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Paranormal Lockdown. It was also featured in Bethesda's 2018 video game Fallout 76 under the name Fort Defiance and acted as a base for the Brotherhood of Steel, one of the game's main factions.
Number 5 on this list is the Seelbach Hotel. Seelbach Hotel is located in the heart of Louisville and has been there for quite some time. Virginia Travel Tips says, in 1905 the Seelbach Hotel in Louisville opened its doors. For more than a century, this exquisite historic hotel has functioned as one of Kentucky's most important historical landmarks. The hotel, on the other hand, is notorious for its ghostly activity. Patricia Wilson, the Lady in Blue, is one of the hotel's most famous sightings. She was a woman who had recently divorced her spouse and intended to meet him later at Seelbach to try and work out their differences. Unfortunately, her husband died in a car accident and never showed up. She was devastated by the loss and she died not long after that. As a result, guests notice a woman in a blue outfit strolling around the hotel. Other ghosts have been reported at the hotel, and they include a woman dressed in old, worn-out clothing who was approached by a staff member attempting to communicate with her, but then she disappeared. Most of the encounters with this woman have been tame, but there have been some that have gotten quite aggressive. Some teenagers were apparently making fun of her or doing something that they shouldn't have been doing, and she responded by literally clawing and scratching at one of them, leaving horrible marks behind. The victim also said that it felt as if she crawled into his brain and told him horrible secrets about himself that he'll never be able to forget. A hotel like this is supposed to be nice and relaxing, but based on what I've read, I don't know if that's going to be the experience you get at Seelbach. Number 4 on this list is the Talbot Tavern. Really too bad that this place is haunted, because it would have been a pretty nice spot to get a brew if it wasn't. Virginia Travel Tips says, built in 1778, the Talbot Tavern is located in Bardstown, Kentucky. Currently, the Haunted Kentucky Tavern serves as both a restaurant and a 5-room B&B, and it's known for being haunted. A former accountant recalls coming across a man in a long coat strolling across the top floor. He then turned to face her and began laughing uncontrollably. Another famous hotel resident was the lady in white, who forced a couple to flee the hotel in the middle of the night since she was hovering over them while sleeping. Many workers and visitors to the residence have related accounts such as orbs floating around the rooms, flashes of lights without cameras being seen, objects moving on their own, and doors opening and closing when no one's in the building. I, for one, am not trying to wake up to a ghost just hovering over me, guys. Honestly, it might give me a heart attack and, well, I'd never wake up again. This place is weird because no one really knows why it's as haunted as it is, but there's no doubt that it's teeming with paranormal energy. Pick a different place to go get a drink if you're in Kentucky. Number 3 on this list is the Kentucky State Penitentiary. We always got to include the creepy jail in one of these lists, guys, and this is Kentucky's. Virginia Travel Tips says, the Kentucky State Penitentiary is situated near the Tennessee border on a sharp bend in the Cumberland River. In the 1800s, a maximum security jail was built there. It is a gorgeous place from afar, but up close, it is a death and ghost machine, according to a local author and paranormal investigator. Thousands of men have been executed in the prison's electric chair, known as Old Sparky. During his death row cell inspections in the late 1980s, a guard had a terrible incident where no one stayed. He was greeted by a prisoner who was reading the Bible. When he returned to his office, he asked about the prisoner's meal, only to discover that no one was in that cell. When he returned to the cell, he discovered that it was empty except for a small Bible on the floor. Yeah, kinda weird. More strange occurrences were recorded around the institution, with many reporting seeing a reflection of an inmate who attempted to shock them. Okay, so honestly guys, I want to take this as seriously as possible, but Old Sparky? Like, imagine dying in a thing called Old Sparky. Like, I think it's meant to electrocute people, but why does the killing chair sound so cute? Kinda sounds like something that you name your dog, not a murder weapon. Anyways, Old Sparky has certainly done its job though, and now the place is super haunted. Most of the prisons we talk about on this channel you can go visit if you like, because they're all typically abandoned. That's not the case with this one though. The Kentucky State Penitentiary is still fully operational and has tons of prisoners in it. Not only do these people have to chill in jail, but it just so happens that their jail is also haunted. Number 2 on this list is Mammoth Cave. So we actually spoke about Mammoth Cave on this channel before in our series about top 5 terrifying caves where evil awaits, so if that interests you, then go check it out. It made that list because it was super haunted, and naturally it has to make this one as well. It is, as you'd expect, located in Kentucky. It is the biggest cave in the state by far, which is why it's named Mammoth Cave. Most of the cave has been unexplored, which is kind of nuts considering we've already seen about 400 miles of it up until this point. This has been an area of interest to people for thousands of years. Back 4,000 years ago, it's believed that people used this cave to bury their dead. This was the first encounter this cavern saw of death, but it definitely wasn't the last. After the War of 1812, these caves were sold off and used as a place to mine salt. The workers of these mines were slaves and oftentimes were worked to death down there. After the salt had been mined, this place functioned as a spot for sick tuberculosis victims to go. Obviously, this created more death in this place and just contributed to what is a very haunted area now. Today, we get an array of ghostly apparitions popping up to people. Ghosts from all the way back 4,000 years ago have been seen, still lingering and clinging on to this cavern. People have seen the visions of slaves calling out for help and ghosts of sickly individuals as well. H.P. Lovecraft, one of the most famous fantasy horror writers, was inspired by this cave. Anything that inspired that guy is probably a spot that you want to avoid. And finally, number 1 on this list is Nada Tunnel. What is it about tunnels that's just so creepy? It feels like there are a few locations in the world that seem to attract paranormal activity, and tunnels are definitely right up there. Virginia Travel Tips says, Nada Tunnel, also known as the Gateway to Red River Gorge, is located in Powell County, Kentucky. Works of a one-lane tunnel on a two-way road began in 1910 and concluded in 1911. Drills and dynamite were used to rip through the limestone rock during construction, and one worker died while attempting to dissolve a stick of frozen dynamite by placing it next to the fire, which, resulted in the dynamite exploding. As a result, the man's spirit is claimed to haunt the Kentucky Tunnel. Others allege that the location is haunted as a result of a climber who died in this region. These incidents are linked to the mythology of a green orb appearing in front of the tunnel. If you plan to enter the tunnel, keep in mind that it only fits one automobile at a time, therefore check for other car headlights before proceeding. This is one of the coolest haunted places in Kentucky for the sake of it being engulfed in nature. So it may look really cool, but the haunted nature of this spot makes me think that it should be avoided. Man, imagine literally getting blown up by a stick of dynamite. Like, that might actually be the worst. Granted, my dude did stick the dynamite literally right next to a fire, so I feel like he might have brought this one on himself a little bit. I'm not really sure how the climber would have died in this tunnel, but you gotta imagine that he screwed up if he was climbing in a tunnel. Either way, the spot is definitely riddled with these spirits, and they manifest themselves as this glowing green orb. Now, there haven't been too many reports of this thing being super dangerous, but it is definitely creepy to say the least. Locals don't really travel down this pathway for fear of the orb and what it could potentially do to them. Also, on a total side note, I just want to bring up the fact that this is a one-way tunnel on a two-lane road. Like, how dangerous is that, guys? What if it's foggy or something and I can't see all the way down the tunnel to the other car? That is literally the dumbest road design I have ever heard of. Maybe the legend was just created by the locals because they know how dangerous this freaking tunnel is. Regardless of what it is, I recommend staying away.